Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, a Thanksgiving week. It is the eve of Thanksgiving on this Takeaway Tuesday. He is Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Taman Turner on the controls, producing and engineering our program. We look a little bit different today because we're all out and about for the holiday. This is the Big 12. This is a different league. We're also streaming live on your screen via our remote, undisclosed location on Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast Channel. We are brought to you, the Full-Time Fan, by Modelo. Here in about 20 minutes, we're going to have Pete Sousa from ESPN and Big 12 Studios. He was on the call for that wild UAB game that took place last Saturday. There was a stabbing in the locker room before the game. He's also really tied into the Baylor program. We'll get his thoughts on what's going on with Dave Aranda and everything surrounding Baylor. Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12, will join us to talk about this new Players Era partnership between the Players Era and the Big 12. That is in hour number 2. And then in hour number 3, Matt Fortuna from College Football Insider, the founder of the Inside Zone, will join us live on the program. R.A. Timken, good morning, sir.
Good morning, James. You know, the thing that I've realized in life is to not ever do anything. I think it's an important piece to life because, like, take, for instance, Thanksgiving. You know, Thanksgiving, it's a holiday. It's great to get family together, but there's a lot of stressing, you know, when it comes to the food and how you're going to make it and where you're going to make it, especially when you're traveling. And so I figured just do nothing. That way there's no external stressors that exist. You know, like my wife wants to have people over to our house at times, and it's like, well, let's just not. That way we don't have to stress about that. Because we have to clean the house and cook and do all these things and get everything ready. And it's like, what if we just didn't, and then we don't have to stress about any of that stuff?
The best way to go for Thanksgiving is to always be leaving your place of residence to go to somebody else's. Like, put all that on them. You're just a guest in their home. They cook for you.
God, that is just screams James Westling, doesn't it? When you go somewhere, James, you've got to still cook and bring something, and it makes it even more difficult when you're doing that and you're not at your own kitchen. Let's say like you're traveling to Houston like I am today. So that just adds a level of stress that's like, well, what if we just didn't go to Houston? That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Let's just not go. I don't need to see my sister and our family. No, we don't need to do that.
So how many people are going to be under that one roof?
It's just going to be myself and our family and my sister's family, and then my brother-in-law's mom, my brother-in-law's sister. So I guess that'd be no, it's not my mother-in-law. It's like a brother's mother-in-law, something.
But I mean,
yeah.
you're pushing double digits. It sounds like, right?
Yeah. My sister has 4 kids. I have 2. So yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, so you're already at like a dozen people in one house. Taman,
what about you?
I will be fortunately at AT&T Stadium for the Cowboys-Chiefs game, so I'll have about 100,000 people there, you know.
That's a wild experience too, James, as I was fortunate to be able to do the pre and post for Cowboys for 5 years, and you sit up there and you're eating, and Jerry gives a pretty decent Thanksgiving meal there for the media, and you look around and you're like, man, there are people and media members that have spent 20, 30 Thanksgivings perched at the top of AT&T Stadium or previously at, you know, the old stadium. It's just crazy to think about, like spending 2 decades, 3 decades worth of Thanksgiving meals watching the Cowboys each and every Thanksgiving.
I've spent the last 5.
Yeah, so I'm not referring to Taman. I'm talking about some of the people that have covered the Cowboys for multiple decades. But that was my run, was 5 years. And it's just an interesting experience for Thanksgiving, very unlike most Thanksgivings where you're at a table and sitting around family. In this case, you're sitting by yourself or with other members of the media, but not really talking for the most part, just watching the game, especially if you're doing the pre and post game show where you really have to watch everything that's happening.
Yeah. It is, I mean, when we work in the sports broadcasting industry, our Thanksgivings are usually, I mean, it's a weird time for instance, so our Thanksgiving will be 3 of us. It will be me, my wife, and my cousin, who happens to live in Dallas, is in his mid-20s, doesn't want to drive 8 hours to go back home and be with his family. So we are cooking a deluxe Thanksgiving meal for my 28-year-old cousin. And that is it. It will be the 3 of us, probably watch some football, chat about what's going on in our lives, and then I will be off to call a football game this weekend. But also the blended family aspect of things. Holidays are weird there because, one side of the family has the little ones for Thanksgiving, and the other party gets them for Christmas, and it's like that. There's a lot of layers to it, so it's a lot of scheduling and coordinating and doing all those things. But it'll be a very quiet Thanksgiving once we're back in Dallas tomorrow.
I could tell you're not stressed at all about the setup with the blended family and ex-wives during Thanksgiving.
No, it's not stressful at all. The coordinating goes flawless. There's never any disagreements. Schedules, wires never get crossed, and it all operates flawlessly. Speaking of flawlessly, I would like to say you look incredible this morning. Ari was very concerned about his Zoom settings. It was like an 8,000-step Zoom makeover, like you're getting ready for a magazine shoot. You look incredible, and the makeup team will be there in 20 just to put the icing on the cake.
Yeah, no, I had my wife wake up very early this morning, for some reason even 30 minutes before I did, so she could have the makeup table set up ready to go, and then that was about 5 a.m. So yeah, it's been a busy morning this morning with the makeup and routines and everything else. I even shouted at the kids just to wake them up so they wouldn't be loud when they got up. So it was a whole thing, Get up, be quiet.
So you woke everybody up to tell them to be quiet this morning.
Yes, that's right.
That's
right.
That's
James.
The way to go.
You can't be too careful.
Life's too short.
What happens if they wake up and they start screaming and they don't realize that I'm doing a show? So they needed to know at 5 a.m, hey, get up now, stop talking.
Get up and be quiet.
Get up and be quiet.
That sounds like a Thanksgiving miracle for those children.
It feels like how we lived our lives as kids in the world, as opposed to now where everything's oh, what would you like? What are your feelings? How do you feel about this? Now everything's very conscientious of kids' feelings. I don't remember that being the case when we were kids. It's kind of you just come with us. I don't really care how you feel about it, and we'll move on with our lives. Things were way better back then because of that.
When we were kids, we weren't allowed to have feelings. We don't have feelings. We don't have feelings.
Please, come on. You're coming with us. I don't care that you're tired and cranky and it's early or whatever. No, now it's how do you feel about this? Do you want to do that? Are you okay? Are you comfortable?
Very well said. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm starting to push back against that. Is that a new black sweatshirt you're wearing today?
Yeah, actually, this is the Cosm sweatshirt. This is Cosm sweatshirt.
Nice.
I just want people here in north central Kansas to know that I'm repping the Dallas Cosm. Thought it would be a great conversation starter. Oh, what is that? Well, you have to live in Dallas to understand it. Let me tell you about my Big 12 Studios show.
Let me tell you about the big city. We've got a thing called Cosm. It's basically unlike anything you've ever seen before, and I just can't tell you about it. Your brain couldn't comprehend how cool it is.
Your brain couldn't understand it. I don't even know how to describe it, but let me get you in touch with my world-famous co-host, and he will do the heavy lifting. All right, so it's a Takeaway Tuesday. Takeaway Tuesday. I've got a couple takeaways. Number one, I learned last night that there's a Major League Volleyball League. It's a league in which they play volleyball. This is basically the volleyball version of the WNBA. Big 12 had 3 players drafted last night. Arizona State's Colby Neal, Kansas State's Shaylee Myers, and Arizona's Jordan Wilson. They were drafted in the, Neal was taken by the Orlando team in the second round with the 13th pick. And then the Atlanta Vibe took K-State's Shaylee Myers, friend of the program. She's been on the show. She was drafted in the second round at pick number 16. And then in the third round, we had Jordan Wilson from Arizona taken 18th overall. So that was one of my takeaways, is that there is a professional volleyball league, and the Big 12 had 3 players taken in the draft last night. Well,
and you wonder, the professional volleyball league, which gave way to Major League Volleyball, which is what you're referring to, is a brand new league. I believe it's either year one or year two. I believe it's year two.
It is. This was their third draft, so they're getting
Got it.
ready to go into their third season.
But I mean, as we see there's a women's soccer league now that's really taken off in the United States, and so you almost wonder if this is like a chicken or egg conversation in a way, right? Like, what was it, NIL that helped to usher in this era, which showed that there is a level of popularity? Was it just the growth of these sports reached a point in which it felt like it was justified to have a league and to pour money and resources into it? It's interesting because we're seeing now with the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, and the growing popularity of that. Again, just wonder if this is a product of the NIL landscape, if it's a product of just more popularity towards these sports in general, which is helped by NIL. I'm just not sure, but it is really interesting to see. There's incredible growing popularity for volleyball as a sport, especially women's volleyball. I think there's very much growing popularity for women's soccer, and I'm sure we'll touch on the fact that TCU is now into the Elite Eight for the Big 12 in the women's soccer tournament. So just kind of interesting, right? I mean, to think about the chicken or egg part of this in NIL and what led to what.
And my first thought was, okay, where are these teams located? Because I'd love to go to a match. Like, this would be a tremendous family activity. I have a 13-year-old daughter that plays volleyball, and I think all the things you said are true. I think NIL, just the popularity of the sport, I think there's a lot of layers and a lot of factors that have gone into this, and I think it'll become more and more popular because volleyball as a sport is surging like softball, and women's basketball has been on this run for several years now, and then women's soccer. And you said it, man. That TCU North Carolina game was insane. So TCU beats North Carolina last night to advance to the Elite Eight, 4-3 on penalty kicks. And the game-tying goal happened in the 89-54 minute.
When 6 seconds left.
6 seconds left. Camden Fuller headed one in from the corner. UNC had taken their first lead in the 81st minute. So, like, the last 10 minutes, and this is where soccer can be really exciting, the last 10 minutes was just back and forth, an absolute war of attrition, and TCU headed to the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament with just 4 shots. They only had 4 shots in this game, 3 on goal, and they all happened in the final minutes.
Crazy. And TCU, of all of the Big 12 teams, I mean, there were in the Sweet 16, BYU, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas, and Baylor. 5 Big 12 teams made the Sweet 16, and only 1 advancing to the Elite Eight. So huge, huge win for TCU to save it for the conference in order to get that bid. And TCU is no stranger to success in soccer. This is the best program in the Big 12 in soccer. Kansas advancing to its first ever Sweet 16. So good on TCU for advancing, and really fun matches last night.
BYU's season came to an end. They lost to a powerhouse Stanford team, but what a year they had. They were the 8th seed in the Big 12 tournament, ran the table, made it to the Sweet 16 of the women's soccer tournament. It's a Takeaway Tuesday. Ari, I hogged the mic for the first 2. What is our third takeaway on this Takeaway Tuesday? What do you have?
So are you following this Lane Kiffin story much? Give me your take on the Lane Kiffin situation, which is just seems like it's jumped the shark a bit here.
Well, I mean, like everybody else, I'm really intrigued by where he ends up, and I do think staying at Ole Miss is a possibility. I mean, Lane Kiffin, he's polarizing.
Are you fatigued by the story? Are you like, just go away? This is ridiculous.
I would say no. I'm not fatigued by it, and for me, it's because of where Ole Miss is in the college football playoff picture. Like, if they were 8-4 and this was just Lane Kiffin because he's Lane Kiffin, then I would be very fatigued. But the fact that I'm really intrigued by, number one, his decision, but number two, what the College Football Playoff Committee does with Ole Miss when the rankings come out tonight and over the next couple of weeks. Because the Big 12 has teams on the bubble, and the Big 12 has a Texas Tech team that's kind of vying with Ole Miss when it comes to potential seeding. That, for me, is why I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree. You know, it's interesting because Kiffin was asked about this recently in terms of the distraction part of it, and he said it's a different generation. It's different than when we were in when players couldn't leave and players chose to go and play for their own state a lot and all that. But this is a different generation. He said they can leave every year, and a lot of that is financially based. So they don't think the traditional way in terms of their coach and what is going on with him next year. That's just not how they think anymore. Do you agree with that?
To a certain degree, I kind of do. Yeah. I mean, I think that we've talked
Yeah, but
about
does
this
A
before.
plus B equals C, I guess? Because I agree with what he's saying. It's a different generation where they're less loyal, but does that mean that this creates less of a distraction? Does A plus B equal C here?
No, I still think it would be somewhat of a distraction because you've got, I mean, you have players on that Ole Miss team that are unsure about what their future looks like because of this. You've got players that now it becomes, well, what if we have a new coach coming in? Do I have a roster spot next season? Or do I want to go with Lane Kiffin if he ends up taking the LSU or the Florida job? What does my future look like? Now, I do think that he's right to a certain degree that I think players are more flexible than they were in the past because of the NIL transfer portal, where almost I think you could make a case that every player goes through that regardless of if their coach is going to be back or if he's going to be gone. They don't necessarily have a roster spot for the next season, regardless of who the coach is. So maybe the distraction is watered down to a certain degree, but I would still think it would be somewhat of a distraction overall, yeah.
Yeah, and look, the Egg Bowl historically has been kind of a wild game. So where the Big 12 is watching on in hopes that maybe somebody stumbles out of the SEC so that that could open up an at-large bid potentially for the Big 12. I think there's opportunities here, and I start with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So I think on a takeaway Tuesday, like though it looks dire because there's five teams, and I would imagine tonight when the rankings come out, there will be five teams again from the SEC that haven't moved from the bracket. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, like that game in Starkville, that's just not a walkover game for Ole Miss. I mean, you've got Texas and Texas A&M in a huge game on Thanksgiving, and then or on Friday after Thanksgiving on Black Friday, and then Alabama Auburn. Like the fact that rivalry weekend in the SEC is here means that that the teams that right now that are going to be you know penciled into the bracket might not necessarily win their games because these are big rivalry games that mean a ton of these programs, and specifically Ole Miss and Mississippi State with all of this hanging out there. I think to say basically like, oh, it's a different generation of player, they're not distracted by these things, I think is like it's what Lane Kiffin wants to tell himself and believe, but I'm not sure that that's true. Like there's got to be a ton hanging over in terms of what you just outlined, and like I think based on his comments, like he's gone. I also think based on reality, he's gone. I don't know why he would stay with both of those two options looming large.
Agreed. And if you look at his track record historically, like he's never been anywhere longer than his Ole Miss job, which he's been there for 6 years. I mean, he likes to start over and he likes to move around and he likes new scenery. So I'm
And
with
think
you.
of
I
the
think he's gone.
stupidity, and think of the stupidity again from the side of the university that's forcing him to have to make a decision. Like if they didn't say anything, you know, I mean, just imagine. Like I feel like the pressure is ratcheted up even more because it's like, oh, we've got to win so that he stays and we go to the playoff kind of thing. It feels like it's added undue pressure to a situation that is extremely pressurized. Like I'm almost at a point now where I'm going to predict Mississippi State to win this game.
Is that game in Starkville?
Yeah.
Oh, that changes a lot. That
Yep.
changes a lot for that one. All right,
Yep.
this is Big 12 Today here on Big 12 Radio. We are presented to you, the full-time fan, by Modelo. And coming up next, we welcome in Pete Sousa from ESPN, NBC, and Big 12 Studios. He was on the call for that wild UAB game that had a pregame locker room stabbing. We'll get the inside scoop there. And all things Baylor. Pete Sousa joins us around the corner. He's Ari, I'm James, and this is Big 12 Radio, exclusively on TuneIn and on Big 12 Studios. We're inching closer to the Big 12 football championship game. It's Saturday, December 6th at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central in Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium. Halftime show by award-winning country music star John Pardee. Also, both schools' marching bands. Tickets are available exclusively through SeatGeek or Big12Sports.com. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios. And another familiar voice and face from Big 12 Studios is Pete Sousa, who does play-by-play for ESPN and NBC. And he was on the call for that wild UAB game last Saturday for ESPN. There was a stabbing before the game in the locker room. And then also, Pete is a Baylor guy that has the inside scoop on what's going on with Dave Aranda. Huge win for the Baylor men's basketball team last night, in which the Creighton radio announcer loses his mind on some late-game officiating. So there's a lot of reasons why we welcome Pete into the show. Hey, Pete, good morning.
Losing my mind to be here with you guys. It's been too long, and we welcome. I haven't been here since Taman's been here. He's the man, dude. He makes it happen. Last night, so smooth. I get all the details and the info, and here I am after talking to James yesterday morning. I'm pumped to be with you guys. And by the way, yesterday, my boy McHarg, he doesn't come on with video. What's his deal? He's a handsome guy. Like, come on.
Ari was very upset to the point where Taylor actually texted me afterwards, and Ari, I failed to mention, he apologizes.
He should apologize.
Make sure to tell Ari I'm very sorry. I was in my car and I was very flustered, and I said Ari he'll never forget it or forgive you.
Yeah, it's true. I never forgive or forget. Also, important to note that I was even a smart aleck about it and was like, yeah, Taylor's on a video during the interview.
Oh, I heard you. It was great. You go, all right, we're on video, but Taylor's not. I was like, score one for my guy, Ari.
All right, Pete, man, so before we get to the Baylor stuff, take us through that UAB incident. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. What in the world happened?
Is, the big word in all caps is sad, right? And then subtext underneath after that, strange. It was, got to the stadium at 11:15, ran into one of our, production guys, like a local crew guy outside the truck, and he said there had been an incident at the facility about an hour earlier, and got to the booth and kind of wanted to. There's so much rumors and stuff, we know that out there. And got to the booth, I checked online, there was a story, but I saw UAB support staff guys on the field, so I said, they're going to know. And so I just walked down, and I'm not trying to break any news. That's what I told these guys. I said, I'm here with ESPN to call the game. I want to celebrate the game. Just looking for context and accurate information, like what happened this morning. And it was interesting because, those support staff guys are an extension of the team, because those guys were so disappointed and sad. And they were like, one of our teammates stabbed the other. And I really was taken back, obviously. And then, my next question, is everybody okay? They said yes. And then the third question after that was, is this going to affect the game? If any of these guys play? And they said no. So we went back up to the television booth, and it was sort of like, okay, we communicate with people at ESPN. How do we approach this? Because again, this is not 60 Minutes. That's or ESPN right. News Arm. We're here to call a game, and you don't want to start talking about an incident where families are watching at home and they're not sure if their relatives were involved. So it was really dicey the way we wanted to handle it. We had to be delicate, right? We didn't want it to get dicey. So their corporate communications people came in with their sports information director right before the game and really showed us that, aside from the guys that were involved physically, there were 6 or 7 guys on their defensive front who are not going to be available because they saw it. It was traumatic. And, some of the things I'll gloss over quickly so we can get to other stuff, obviously. But, it was a scary, scary scene in their football facility that morning. The player, the victim, was seriously hurt and terrified, thought they were going to die, because they're in shock and they're asking people, hey, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to die? And so there's players around seeing this. And this was all conveyed to me by somebody who was inside the building. So, we communicate with people at ESPN, and they coach us up really well on how to handle it. And, I was with Forrest Connolly. He was the analyst. And lucky for me, Forrest is a 15-year veteran calling these games. So he really helped me just sort of, hey, we're just going to stick to the facts, do what they say. Anything you say, I'll follow you, man. Like, don't you worry. You're not alone on this. And so we opened the game, talked about the football, talked about the incident, gave it, I think, the attention and the respect, and the empathy that it deserved. And then we were on to football. But, it was sad because, and James knows this, you go to these games and you meet with the coaching staff the day before. We were at the walkthrough. Reportedly, something happened at the walkthrough that bubbled over to Saturday. So we were at the walkthrough and didn't notice anything. We met with Alex Mortensen, UAB's head coach, amazing guy. So you're just pulling for this team in this situation, and it was just sad and strange. And I'm really happy that nobody was. It seems like everybody's going to be okay. The alleged attacker is being charged with attempted murder. Like, you can find that online right now. So it was a rough situation, and I don't think it's representative of that football program or the coaching staff or certainly the people we worked with there or the city of Birmingham. But it's like it was a rough deal. I'd never had a game happen like that. That was very strange and very sad.
Were you surprised they played the game?
Yeah, I was, but Forrest said to me right away, again, that's why I love working with guys that have that much skin in the game and have been around for that long. Forrest said, it's senior day, they're going to play. And that's what he said before we heard anything. And it's exactly what the case was. Alex Mortensen said in his post-game press conference, they voted, the team voted, and they said they wanted to play. One thing that was encouraging were there were a couple guys who are really good who were crossed out because of the trauma of the situation, and then they showed up and did play. So like in the first quarter, their SID was like, hey, you had Eamon Smalls crossed off, who, by the way, James, you're going to love this dude if he plays. He's big, he's fast. People call him Biggie Smalls. Really like a fun thing, and he played and he made a couple plays. So guys who were actually probably right there and saw it, found whatever they needed to find to go on and play. And I'm sure they're going to be happy they made that decision, but it was nice to see at least a little bit of, life and moving forward. Can't even imagine what those guys are going through.
Man, my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
There's also a lot to unpack down at Baylor. So Dave Aranda is going to be back next season. Saw him talking at his press conference about the frustration and the disconnect within the fan base, and that just felt very un-Dave-like for him to address that and say that, maybe I should have been opening up more to people around me. And he said I kept the media away too much. Just what are your thoughts on the whole Dave Aranda situation? Anything you can add from the Baylor family?
Yeah, well, I think Dave is right about that, because unfortunately what they're moving towards here in Baylor, or in Waco, I should say, at Baylor, is there's a concern among the fan base that apathy. You start hearing that word and it's like, oof, that's almost like a third rail. I really am. I feel for the athletic department and the school, because they were put in an untenable situation. I have gotten a chance Baylor was instrumental in the rise of my career, and I have a lot of loyalty, and I'm still very connected to people over there. I think Mack Rhoades is an exceptional person. I think some stuff happened in his life that was way out of character, and that led to the separation between he and the university at a time where the university needed to make some big decisions. And, I know you guys are familiar. I talked last week with Shahan Jayaraja, right, from CBS Sports, just an amazing college football writer. And on Thursday, I said, what do you think about the timing of this situation? Will Baylor have the ability to go and grab one of these, higher profile head coaches during this coaching cycle if they want to make a change? And he said to me, hey, I don't believe they're going to have the time, because I think the separation of the athletic director and the school is going to take so long, with all the bureaucracy and everything that goes into that they won't have time. Well, he was overall right, because at the end of the day, they reached that separation last Thursday. So I think myself and a lot of people around the football program thought, okay, well, this means they're going to move swiftly, hire an AD, and hire a new head coach. That's not what happened. And I think that the more and more I thought about what Shahan said, the more and more I leaned on some of my sources in administration in big time college sports. You just can't make changes like that. You can't be irresponsible. You can't be quote unquote, air quotes, swift, because hiring an athletic director is not like going out to the grocery store and picking up a quart of milk. You've got to go through channels and channels and channels and channels. And do they want to come? Maybe they don't want to come. So Linda Livingstone, the president of the school, last Friday puts out a statement, hey, we're going to keep Dave Aranda. And I really believe it was the most prudent option for this school. If you want to blame anyone, and I don't want to blame this guy because I truly believe he was suffering from the human condition, and I believe Mack Rhoades will make an amazing comeback somewhere. I do. But if you want to blame anyone for the situation, it's the transgressions of Mack Rhoades, the former athletic director, that put this school and the university and Dr. Linda Livingstone in a situation that absolutely stinks, man. I mean, and now everybody's like, well, like people are upset with her. And look, Dave can still coach his rear end off too. And they have a top 30 recruiting class. So we'll have to see. And to James, what you alluded to, this is a long answer, but Dave is pretty open to self-evolution and to checking himself out and saying, where can I improve? And I believe he knows that he's got to get a little more connected with the media and give people a little bit more who follow this team.
Yeah, he's very self-reflective, but in some ways it feels like he overcorrects in some of that self-reflection at times. And I think one of those would be the media part. Like there was a time where his first couple of years he was very open with the media, and then maybe he was too open, so he pushed back. And it's like he just overcorrects in one way. So let's go back to the apathy piece, which I agree with. And I certainly feel it from friends of mine that are Baylor fans. Not all of them, but some of them. How much damage does this do to the fan base, which in turn does damage, I would think, overall to the team based on money and NIL and everything else?
I think you have to play the games. I mean, that's a loaded question, right? Because
yeah,
it worries me to think that next year Baylor will begin the season with like people not going to games to make a statement. But that's possible, right? I mean, that is possible. I think if your team wins, Baylor's a fickle place with fans. I think they will all come to the games if it's a winning product. I definitely don't think they'll get a head start next year. And oh, by the way, you're playing Texas Tech next year. Playing BYU next year. You're going to have to go on the road to play Auburn. So this is not like it's going to be a tougher schedule next year than it was this year. And this year is pretty tough to start things off. So you really do want to come loaded for bear. No pun intended, but they're going to have to. Time takes time too. It's a long off season. Things can happen that can drum up interest. Time does heal a little bit, but right now it's not in a great spot because you react to the fact that, oh my God, we're going to have meatloaf for the 7th straight night. We've been having meatloaf over here a lot. You keep getting served meatloaf as a fan base. You're like, we're good.
Yeah, on the meatloaf.
But here we go. We got meatloaf again, right? And so I think that right now there's a reaction to that. And then you go out and you get your doors blown off in Tucson. That doesn't help. I'm surprised to see. I think they're a 2.5-point favorite this Friday or this Saturday against Houston, which was a surprise to me. But I don't know a whole lot about that stuff, anyways. It turns out usually at the end of it all.
Pete, the media piece is interesting because Baylor. We cover all 16 schools here on Big 12 today, and Baylor's a program that is very closed off media-wise. No coaches, no players, no access. How do the players respond to that, as far as you can tell? And how do the players respond to Dave Aranda? Like, I think there's this narrative that's being built that, well, the players love Dave Aranda, they love coaching, or they love playing for him and this staff. Do you get that same sense that the players are all in? Like, because I ask, retention's going to be big for this staff for next year too.
Yeah, retention is going to be big, but like there's no way you're going to retain Sawyer Robertson, right? Like he's gone. And so there are a lot of key components to what you touched on, James, that you do have to work to retain a lot of really good players. And I think that they hope that the recruiting class that's coming in will, excite the existing roster, also you do have like, for Dave, as much as he can be viewed as a real steady guy and maybe not as charismatic, Keenan Hall, Dallas Baker, Matt Pallage, they have guys on the staff who are like super excitable, and great recruiters. Like Keenan Hall is the guy with the "We Pay Players" shirt. Like the running backs coach who really is a heck of a recruiter all over the country, but especially in Texas. And I think some of the fear is that those dudes could possibly use this 1 year to leave the program, right? The coaching staff, right? Because you don't want to leave as the ship is quote unquote sinking. You also have to consider the fact that the players do love Dave, and there's a connection there. There's Sawyer Robertson is a particular kind of guy, and so is Josh Cameron. But those guys both had offers, big money to go other places in the offseason, and they chose to stay and play for Dave Aranda. It's not as closed off as you, and I get what you're saying. They're not as closed off. The players aren't like the administration over there. They want us to experience the full-on Baylor thing, right? But Dave is so like. Here's a great example. When Dave won the Sugar Bowl and the team won the Big 12 championship, I heard him say, I had their first game after that. It was like Albany Baylor in, I don't know, I guess it was 2022 or 2022, I guess. And he had talked about how that offseason, where you're on the banquet circuit and you're getting all the awards, was probably one of the most uncomfortable times of his life, right? Like success and what came with it was just as uncomfortable as defeat and what comes with it. You have to march out there and you have to, I think he is almost more comfortable standing up and taking the bullets than standing up and taking all the affection and the love. That's just not the kind of guy he is. So that is a window into the head coach we're dealing with. And I think that makes the job people and the athletic department at Baylor more difficult because you're like, get out there. Like, this is the last thing I'll say on this. Like, if Baylor had a coach, and I'm not saying they should bring this guy back, but like, if you have a Matt Rule that's going to stand in front of the media, give a little rah-rah, give a little bit of their personality, show some vulnerability, like, at least the fans and the media can like, oh, okay, like this guy, he cares. Like the pilot light's on. Like we can affect him. It's like, and we've all been there, guys. You're in a relationship with a partner, and she's telling you, you're not giving me what I need. Like you're not expressing yourself. I need more of expression from you. How are you feeling? And you're like, well, that's just not my personality. But they want that, and they want to see a reaction out of you, and that's kind of what love is sometimes. And I think the folks at Baylor on the other end sort of feel cut off sometimes, but that's just who this dude is.
Really good stuff, Pete. Man, a lot to go over there. We appreciate your time. Big 12 Studios, ESPN play-by-play, NBC play-by-play. We're going to talk about your Baylor basketball team that got a huge win last night.
Huge.
Coming up next, beating Creighton 81-74. Always great to see you, buddy.
Yo, happy Thanksgiving, fellas. Keep up the awesome work. I appreciate y'all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, Taman. Welcome, Taman. I saw you at Media Days, but you're the man, dude. I'll see you soon.
Thank you much.
Take care.
Appreciate you guys.
Pete Sousa from Big 12 Studios, Inside the 12, ESPN, NBC, play-by-play announcer joining us to go over the UAB stuff and everything happening down in Waco. Some really interesting takes from Pete. Coming up next, the Players Era Tournament is underway. The Big 12 men's basketball collectively just won a 13-game series in 7 last night. Details coming up next. We are brought to you, the full-time fan, by Modelo here on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Back inside Big 12 today here exclusively on TuneIn on Big 12 Radio. Watched on Big 12 Studios. Just had Pete Sousa from Inside the 12 here on Big 12 Studios, ESPN and NBC play-by-play to talk all things Baylor. Speaking of Baylor, Ari, what a night last night in Big 12 men's basketball. The Big 12 goes 7-0 as the Players Era tournament kicked off. Baylor, Kansas, Houston, Arizona State beats Texas out in Maui, all winners last night. The league could not have had a better night. Headlined by Baylor, kicking off the Players Era tournament with an 81-74 win over Creighton. They dominated physically. They had 45 rebounds to Creighton's 28, including 22 offensive rebounds. Creighton made a little bit of a run late in the game, but Baylor's Cameron Carr was fantastic. He cleaned up his own miss for a putback with 25 seconds left. That pushed the lead to 5, and then he hit a couple of free throws. He also blocked a 3 with 8 seconds left to seal it, and even though Creighton made a bunch of threes, they had 11 in the game. The rebounding was the difference, and Baylor, with a completely new roster, just manhandled the Blue Jays.
Yeah, Baylor took control in the second half. They were down by 2, and a 10-0 run that opened the second half got them out to a 46-38 lead, and they kind of never looked back after that, and were pretty much in control the entire time. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think coming into the season, there were teams that we knew about and figured what they would look like, and I don't know that we had a great sense of how good Baylor was going to be. We know Scott Drew's a hell of a coach, that he he's won a national title and has been one of the best programs, has led one of the best programs in the country. But I think there were just so many unknowns, and they've been impressive, probably the most impressive team to start the year, just overall. Now, I think the one thing when you look at them overall, they have an explosive offense, but the defense continues to struggle, and that's really the last 3 seasons been kind of the issue for Baylor. But beyond that, I mean, this is a great start for them, and it's fun to see because this was a huge unknown coming into the year based on the players and the personnel.
Something that is fun to see and something that was fun to listen to was the Creighton radio team absolutely losing their minds in the second half of this game as the lead started to expand for Baylor.
Shot clock. Carr into the paint. Missed the dunk. And a blocking foul. What are you talking about? That was 2 seconds after the play ended. Carr driving. He's outside the circle. He's outside the circle and he's set. He was outside the circle and he was set. Brett Smith blew it. He was outside the restricted area. He was straight up and down. He was set like the statue sitting out in front of New York, and they called that. That's an absolutely horse crap call. In a game that's been played out like this. Unbelievable bailout call by an incompetent referee. And ball don't lie.
That is John Bishop, the Creighton radio play-by-play announcer, on the call for Baylor and Creighton. Baylor gets the 7-point win.
Well, and James, knowing John, John Morris, the voice of the Baylor Bears, like we do, I can't imagine him ever reacting like this. It was, he's not wrong. If you watch the replay of the play itself, like, it felt like minimal contact. I mean, sometimes it's really weird in basketball when, like, There can be a lot of contact and there's no call, and then there's like very minuscule contact, like in this case, and there's a call. And I would imagine the broadcaster feels like that's a really big defensive possession there. And, Creighton was down, but if they get a stop there, they have a chance. And so I think the guy was just losing his mind because they not only didn't get a stop, it was an and one, but obviously the free throw was missed anyways. But it was a incredible reaction. You don't hear that very much. I mean, he just lost his mind. And the funny part is, if you're listening to that, if you just turn on the radio and you hear that, you must be thinking like, oh, wow, like this game may have just come down to that play. And it was like with 2 minutes left.
Still a lot of ball left in that one. Baylor gets the 7-point win. Kansas got a win. Houston in overtime gets past Syracuse. We'll have more on these games later, but Iowa State at the Players Era Tournament. Number 14 Iowa State takes down number 15 St. John's. This game was close throughout the entire contest. It had 8 lead changes in the second half. Came down to the final seconds, but Iowa State clamped down defensively. St. John's and Big East Player of the Year candidate Zuby Ejiofor's 3 rimmed out at the buzzer, and Iowa State got the win. But maybe the most notable thing, because he's been injury-plagued throughout his career, Iowa State senior point guard Tamin Lipsey left the game with a lower body injury late in the contest. Don't know what his status is going to be moving forward. Either way, though, Iowa State got a massive win for the league.
Yeah, but it did not look good. Lipsey appeared to be in tears. So, it did not. There was complete silence in the building when it happened. And, kind of amazing that Iowa State was able to compose itself enough to win this game, which came down to the end. And we had a lot of these last night. Late last night in Maui, Arizona State did that to Texas. But Lipsey had 16 points, 5 assists, and a steal before exiting the game. And then Otzelberger said after the game that his status is day-to-day, that he suffered a lower body extremity injury. So, we'll see. The Cyclones are set to take on Creighton this afternoon. I can't imagine we'll see him in this game, but hopefully long-term things are okay. And this is, look, injuries always dictate outcomes of season, but it feels like with Iowa State, like last year, they just couldn't seem to get healthy. Like they played at a really high level and just couldn't seem to get healthy. And this would be a devastating injury for a experienced team. And it feels like Lipsey too. He said, remember he had an eye thing a couple of years ago. Like he can't seem to get right either. So hopefully this isn't long term, but certainly looks bad and did not look good at the start.
Yeah, he had the eye thing. Then last year he had the hand injury. It was his non-shooting hand, but he missed a lot of time. Milan Momcilovic was massive. 23 points, hit 5 threes in the game as Iowa State gets the 1-point win over St. John's. Houston beat Syracuse in overtime, got a little bit of a scare. Kansas gets past Notre Dame by 10. But let's give Arizona State a little bit of love. This is a different tournament. This is the Maui Invitational. Arizona State stunned Texas 87-86. With about 5 minutes to go, Arizona State, they were down, but then Maurice Odom just took over. He scored 7 straight points. Then there was an offensive rebound by the big guy, Masamba Diop, who turned into a 3-point play with the old school and one. Diop then had a hook shot in the lane with less than a minute to go to tie it at 84, and then with 10 seconds left, Odom hit a go-ahead step-back three-pointer from the top of the key to give Arizona State a really big win, I would say, for Bobby Hurley and that staff. 87-86. They beat Texas last night late in Maui.
Yeah, the Mo Odom game, he was incredible in this game. This will be, I think to start the year, I don't know that there's been anybody better than Mo Odom so far. What do you have, 36 in this one? And like last year's Arizona State team may have had more top-end talent, but it feels like the pieces fit a little bit better. I want to reserve judgment over the course of the season because who knows? But this is a big-time win for Arizona State. Texas has had a consistently good program. They're perennial, NCAA tournament teams. They've got a ton of talent. And I thought, like, defensively, Arizona State played great. Texas turned the ball over 19 times. So that was huge in this game. But 36 points, 6 threes, 16 of 18 for the free throw line. Odom was getting to the foul line. And then that three-pointer, he makes the step back that put Arizona State up front. That is a hell of a win last night for Arizona State.
And Maurice Odom is a transfer from Pepperdine. 4-star transfer, but he was a no-star kid out of high school. He's from the Bronx, New York. Ends up at Pepperdine. Also played at Pacific a couple of seasons to start his career. Had a huge tournament run last year in the West Coast Conference tournament. Pepperdine made a deep run. They made the semis. He averaged like 22 points a game in that tournament. Was all freshman team 2 years ago. So great find by Arizona State to nab him in the portal. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are brought to you, the Full-Time Fan, by Modelo. Our Big 12 games of the week on Friday. On a Black Friday, we have Arizona at Arizona State here on Big 12 Radio at 8 p.m. Central. And then on Saturday, you can catch Texas Tech at West Virginia at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central here on the channel. Hour number 2 of the show is coming up next. We'll be joined by Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12, to talk about the Players Era tournament and everything that goes on there with the new agreement that the conference has signed. But up next is our Big 12 weekly award winners from the conference as we head back to the gridiron. This is Big 12 Today exclusively on TuneIn. Big 12 Today here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios each and every weekday, 8A to 11A Eastern Time, 7 to 10 Central. Alongside Ari Timken, he's on social at RE Sports, ARI Sports. I'm James Westling on social at James Westling. We've got Taman on the controls, our producer Taman, operating things from our undisclosed Dallas studios. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Had Pete Sousa from ESPN, NBC, and Big 12 Studios inside the 12 in hour number 1. We'll have Brian Thornton, the VP of Big 12 Men's Basketball. He's actually joining us from the Players Era event out in Vegas. He'll be coming up here in about 45 minutes on the program. And if you miss any of our interviews, we're podcasting on the reg on Apple Podcast, Spotify, right here. Tune in on demand. Each and every week, each and every Tuesday, we go through the Big 12 Conference Weekly Award winners. And this week, for the Offensive Players of the Week, we've got a pair of running backs. It was a record-setting Saturday in the conference. 3 guys went over 200. Joe Jackson set the single-game rushing record for Kansas State. He is co-Offensive Player of the Week with L.J. Martin of BYU, had a career-high 222 yards and a couple of touchdowns in their massive road win at Cincinnati. That was a top 10 rushing day in BYU history.
Yeah, phenomenal day. I mean, look, as much as it's funny how we started the year talking about this as a league of quarterbacks, and it's the year of the quarterback because it has not transpired that way, and yet, you know, we're still looking at the 3 best rushing teams in the country in the Big 12 that are the 3 best teams in the Big 12 right now. So yeah, L.J. Martin, you know, he had gotten off to an incredible start, suffered some injuries, took a step back a little bit, and then exploded in this game. And they needed it. I mean, they needed every one of those 222 yards because Bachmeier was hit a bunch. I thought Cincinnati had a really good game plan defensively against Bear Bachmeier. I think he was hit 16 times in this game. So they needed every one of those 222 rushing yards and 44 receiving yards for L.J. Martin to win this football game.
And on the other side, for Joe Jackson, he had 236 yards rushing in the first half. And Chris Kleiman said post-game that K-State was going to run the football at Utah in ways that nobody had this season. And it looked like, to me, a lot of misdirection, a lot of counter plays. But for the most part, they found an opening right into the teeth of that defense because a lot of these runs were just straight up the gut where K-State would open a huge lane for Joe Jackson, who finishes with the school record 293 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns.
I can't be the only one who thought, where has this been all year? You know, like what a weird thing to say after the game. Like, oh yeah, against Utah we had to figure out some things to run the football. Like, but what about the previous 10 games? Where was the running the ball game plan going against those defenses? Because that would have helped a lot. I mean, Joe Jackson, you know, were we waiting for a record-setting nearly 300-yard performance? No, but, you know, a modest 150 yards would have been good in some of these games. I mean, I can't imagine the feeling from a K-State fan hearing that. Like, oh, cool, like great game plan. Where was that the last 10 games? How you what? Just a bizarre situation. Because yeah, I mean it like yeah, we looked at some things, saw some ability for us to run the ball. Like, huh? What about the other games? Like where the teams that you're playing against weren't nearly as good stopping the run.
Like Oklahoma State.
Was I the only one that felt that was weird to say after a game when it's like you've been kind of struggling to run the football the entire year at times?
No, I felt the same way. Where was this when you had 5 takeaways against Oklahoma State and barely won by a touchdown?
Literally last week. Could you not look at the film on Oklahoma State's defense and figure out some, I don't know, ways to get after them? It's just a weird deal. And, I mean, look at, you know, Joe Jackson, 69 yards rushing on 14 carries against Oklahoma State, 25 yards rushing on 10 carries against Texas Tech, 69 yards rushing on 20 carries against Kansas. Had 27 for 110 against TCU, but like just a bizarre thing to say when you like needed that production from the running back position. You've been talking all year about how, how much you've needed Dylan Edwards, and it's like, man, this game made it seem like you didn't really need Dylan Edwards as much as you thought you did.
Totally agree. And like he set the single game rushing record that was previously held by Darren Sproles, who was a almost 2,000-yard rusher every year that he was at K-State. So like he was doing it every single Saturday. This kind of came out of nowhere. To your point, didn't expect a guy that had 25 yards against Texas Tech to be setting the single game rushing record for Kansas State. Defensive players of the week went to Will James, defensive back at Houston, and Dalton Johnson from Arizona. Will James became one of only 3 FBS players this year with 2 interceptions and a forced fumble in a single game. He was the first Houston player with 3 takeaways in a game since 2008. And for Dalton Johnson, 18 tackles, the most by an Arizona Wildcat since 2014. Arizona held Sawyer Robertson in check, below 200 yards passing, in a massive win for the Wildcats.
Well, and the other part to that would be now you set up this incredible Territorial Cup game on Friday between Arizona and Arizona State. I wish I had a better answer in terms of when the last time these two teams played, when they were both, at this level, but it's been a while. And so, it's a humongous game. And this is one of those games we've talked about kind of all year where, like, it's not all about the playoff. Not everything revolves around the playoff. And, like, this is exactly the example of that. This is a rivalry game, two teams that have had surprisingly successful seasons, and maybe not, surprisingly from the standpoint of Arizona State, but I think when you play this thing out and see the injuries they had, that's the surprising part. But both teams looking to get to 9 wins on the season with an opportunity to get to a bowl game and get to double-digit wins. Yeah, huge game here on Friday between Arizona and Arizona State that has no playoff implication for the most part. Arizona State is still in it in terms of the Big 12, championship game picture, but I think big picture, this game is huge just from the standpoint of not having any playoff implications, or for the most part.
It is a massive game, and we've touched on this before. Like, that's what gets lost with this new college football playoff is why do we even have to say, well, it doesn't have any playoff implications? It's still a massive game between 2 really passionate fan bases, a heated rivalry that before the college football playoff, it would just be a massive matchup. Bowl implications on the line in terms of where these teams will get slotted in the Big 12 pecking order. Like, that's what has gotten lost with the college football playoff is if you're not in the mix for the college football playoff, it's like the rest of the games don't matter. And they do still matter. They matter to the fans. They matter to the players. They matter to us. And this is a great matchup to highlight on a Friday that's going to be a full day across college football that I hope doesn't get overlooked. All right, special teams players of the week, Kyle Conrarty, Iowa State, 5 for 5 on extra points, hit a 55-yard field goal. Third time he's won the award this week. He now has 5 50-plus yard field goals, the second most in Iowa State history. And then No Rulas, the kicker at UCF, had the game winner against Oklahoma State, a 34-yarder. He has 3 50-yard makes this season, the most in UCF FBS history. Man, Ari, I think you were onto something with Iowa State really missing Kyle Conrarty for a good chunk of the season, middle part of the year, because when he's out there, like, he's just chalking up these special teams players of the week awards.
Yeah, I mean, he's arguably the best kicker in the conference, and he hit was it 60 from 60 for the Iowa game, but it was pretty deep. I mean, 50 something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, Iowa State starts off 5-0 and lose 4 straight, and a big part of that was what they lost from the defensive backfield because they were being taken advantage of. I mean, even Caden Salter put up big-time numbers passing against that Iowa State defense. But I think the sort of best-kept secret of that slide was that they had to change their offensive philosophy, and in certain situations, maybe they were more aggressive because they know they didn't have a place kicker. So I think, it put the offense in an uncomfortable position. Not uncomfortable, but rather like a position that they just weren't used to. And so I think like all of those things played into that 4-game slide. And, Conrarty comes back. There's more confidence on offense. I think Rocco Becht, he was not playing as well in that 4-game slide. It wasn't just about the defense, but I think the offense too. And I think a big part of that was because of Conrarty.
And they're one win away from putting together an 8-4 season. And if you win your bowl game 9-4, the fact that Iowa State had those injuries to their secondary, had that slide middle of the season, like you have to reset your entire mindset when you've gone from driver's seat of the Big 12 conference standings to we might not make a bowl game. I think this may be one of the most underrated Matt Campbell coaching seasons of his tenure, to have this team in a position to win 8 or 9 games.
Well, and I historically, I think the amount of wins that this program has had over the last 3 years, if they're able to get to 9 wins, would be the most in a 3-game stretch ever. So to echo your point, like that's a huge narrative in Ames right now is like, yeah, this season has not gone nearly as well as many expected, and especially after the 5-0 start. I mean, think about it. This team went to the Big 12 championship game last year. They got off to a 5-0 start. We're looking incredible, and then they suffer the 2 injuries in the backfield. The offense kind of collapses a little bit, and yet they're still able to regroup. It says a lot about the culture at Iowa State. It says a lot about the players, and yeah, I mean, this is what Matt Campbell has done holistically. Has completely rewritten, quite literally, the record books at Iowa State. And I mean that in a literal sense, not a figuratively literal sense. I mean that in an actual literal sense. And these last 3 seasons are proof of that, where they won 11 games last year. That was the most ever in program history in a single season. They won, I think, 9 the year before that, and then they're on pace to potentially win 9 this year. It would be the most wins for any Iowa State team in any 3-year stretch ever.
First double-digit win season in Iowa State history last year. Freshman of the week, Bear Bachmeier. Who else? The quarterback from BYU, his 6th Freshman of the Week award, went for 127 passing, 54 on the ground, but had his 11th rushing touchdown this season, which breaks the BYU quarterback record. He's one of only 3 players in the country with 2,300 passing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, and less than 4 interceptions. Nobody's been as stable and as steady as Bear Bachmeier, even without the super flashy numbers this week against Cincy.
Yeah. It kind of feels like I could have given this to Burt Ficklin this week. It feels like it was sort of given to him by default. This was not one of his better games. But at the same time, I say that, like, just statistically it wasn't. But yet, at the same time, like the fact that he got hit 16 times, that he was constantly under pressure and duress and still, made plays throughout this game. He also lost Chase Roberts in this game. I think the status of Chase Roberts is huge moving forward for this team. Obviously with what he's meant to the true freshman quarterback. I mean, he left the game in the first half. So, I mean, I'm kind of talking myself back into Bear Bachmeier winning this award. I think Ficklin ended up still having 3 rushing touchdowns, didn't he? He at least had 2 in the game. So, again, you could have given it to Burt Ficklin, but because the stats for Bear Bachmeier don't stand out. But the fact, again, as I talk myself into it, James, he was hit 16 times, played the second half without his star receiver, who really opens up a ton for him. That's a pretty workmanlike effort for a true freshman quarterback.
Well, and he was really good at turning and handing the ball off to L.J. Martin, who had a massive day.
Ficklin, by the way, 3 rushing touchdowns, 7 for 54 and 3 rushing touchdowns. And one of those rushing touchdowns, like he wasn't touched on a few of those, but one of them, I mean, he took a couple of blows and got off of him. So, I mean, it could have been Ficklin, though, do you give it? Yeah, I think it could have been Ficklin this week.
Yeah, coin flip there. Offensive line of the week goes to Kansas State. They paved the way for a school record 472 rushing yards, the most that Utah has ever allowed at Rice-Eccles Stadium. K-State averaged over 11 yards per carry. And the defensive line of the week, BYU, second straight weekly honor, held that Cincinnati ground game, a healthy Cincinnati backfield to 87 yards rushing and a season-low 14 points. It was Cincinnati's lowest rushing output in 3 seasons. The BYU defensive line had 18 tackles, a couple of TFLs in a hurry among that group up front.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's got to be pretty disconcerting for a Kansas State fan to see that, 293 yards rushing, offensive line of the week. Like, these are some of the biggest issues for this team the entire season, and it's in a losing effort in a game that you kind of let slip away defensively. So, Like it feels like it's perfectly emblematic of the season that Kansas State's had. It's like when the defense is on, the offense can't score. When the offense is on, the defense can't stop anybody. Like they just whatever the opposite of complementary football is, that's what K State's had all year. And I think like sweeping these awards with offensive player of the week and offensive line of the week is just salt in an open wound because it's in a loss and it's like, man, what a lost season to a degree.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like all of this is great, but it was in a losing effort, which puts an asterisk by all these awards and historic rushing numbers that K-State had in the game. That's well said. Before we get to Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12, he joins us from Vegas. We will get you caught up to speed on what's taking place at the Players Era Festival with the Big 12 Conference Weekly Awards, some of the games that took place yesterday, and we'll set the table for tonight's action as well. He's Ari, I'm James. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, powered by Modelo, exclusively on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Streaming on your screen on Big 12 Studios. Coming to you live on the show each Monday through Friday. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league, and we are powered by Modelo. And Modelo fan rule number 13, Ari, if another adult says, we could have scored there, you must nod, even if they could not.
Of course. Yeah. 100%. You didn't see that? Oh, guy was wide open down the field. Of course. Got to see it.
Have to see it. Where's the vision? I felt that way watching the K-State-Utah game because the group chat for K-State was going bananas about we could be doing this, we should be doing this, we've got this. And the whole time I'm thinking, guys, I've seen this a million times. These guys haven't been watching Utah. You don't know how explosive they are. Sure, we could have got a stop there, but also Devin Dampier is a really dynamic quarterback, and I'm not surprised that he ripped off a 57-yard run on 4th and 1 at midfield.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, my offensive player my player of the week this week was Devin Dampier. Sort of surprised again. I get like the ridiculous rushing numbers, but in a losing effort just is kind of ridiculous. But I digress.
Yeah, we digress. We digress, and we impress. And a guy that's been impressive on the hardwood, we'll be talking with Brian Thornton, by the way. He's the VP of men's basketball oversight at the Big 12. He's going to join us here in about 15 minutes. He will join us live from Vegas to get an update on the Players Era field, everything that's happening so far for the Big 12. A great day yesterday. The league collectively went 7-0 yesterday in men's basketball. Our Big 12 men's basketball players of the week from the conference, P.J. Haggerty for Kansas State, over a 3-game stretch, averaged almost 32 points per game, almost 8 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game. He became the first K-State player since Michael Beasley in 2008 to post a 30-point, 10-rebound line. He had 37 against Mississippi State. He has scored 20 or more points now in 6 in a row. And I don't think a lot of people realize what he's doing because K-State isn't a big brand, a big name that's playing in the Players Era or having these, nationally televised ESPN, ESPN2, TNT type showings. But he has been balling out in Manhattan.
Are you buying it?
P.J. Haggerty or Kansas State as a contender?
Yes. Like, are they back? Are you buying it? Have you seen enough? Do you feel like this is a team that's going to make some noise in Big 12 play?
I am buying that this team looks like a team that will be back in the NCAA tournament. I think this team for Kansas State resembles more of Jerome Tang's first team that made it to the Elite Eight, was a top 3 finish in the Big 12. Now, I don't think that they're that good, but I think they're better than the last 2 K-State teams that missed out on the NCAA tournament and had these weird stretches throughout the course of the season where they were beating top 25 teams. Like K-State last year had a month stretch where they were the best team in America, and they still didn't make the NCAA tournament. So those were flashes on those teams. This team, I do think collectively is better and will be in the dance. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. It's just we haven't really seen it yet. The top opponent they played so far, they lost to. It's albeit by 1 point, but I'd like to see them beat better teams more consistently.
Totally agree. Koa Pete, Arizona, newcomer of the week for the second time. That big win over UConn. Their second top 5 win. Arizona has climbed to number 2 in the AP Top 25. Koa Pete had his first collegiate double-double, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks. What do you think about Arizona being number 2 this week in the AP poll?
Yeah, I mean, I think because Purdue just absolutely destroyed Texas Tech, that probably took away the chance for Arizona to jump both Houston and Purdue to get to number 1. But I maintain the best resume right now of any teams in the Big 12 or of any teams in the country would be Arizona in terms of wins overall. But I get it. Purdue absolutely stomped Texas Tech, and that's a top 15 team, so makes sense.
Arizona's now 3-0 against the AP Top 25. None of those games at home, by the way. And then the Big 12 announced its starting five, featuring Jaden Bradley, the point guard at Arizona, Koa Pete from Arizona, Tamin Lipsey from Iowa State. He had a 21-point effort earlier this week. Jamichael Stillwell at UCF, back-to-back double-doubles. They had nice wins over Oakland and Pitt. And then P.J. Haggerty, who's the Big 12 Player of the Week, the league's top bucket getter right now in the conference. But 3 Big 12 Players of the Week over the last 3 weeks, all different guys. Koa Pete and then Kingston Flemings, and now P.J. Haggerty at K-State speaks volumes about the top end, like even the top-end depth in the Big 12 Conference.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think the big story yesterday in hoops was not just the fact that the Big 12 dominated the competition and won each game in the Players era, but the big story between this new partnership with the Players era and the Big 12. And I mean, we talked about it yesterday on the show and how big a development it is for the Big 12 to have now an equity stake in the tournament. The tournament, the Players era tournament, has evolved from last year to this year. This is year 2. There's 20 teams in this year. I think they're projecting 32 teams in next year. 8 will be automatic bids, essentially, from the Big 12, which will kind of help to make sure that at least at the top that there's going to be some really big-time programs and teams and brands there. The thing I'd like to see, though, is for it to be more of a tournament from the standpoint of, now you play 3 games over 3 days, and whoever, I guess, has the most wins, the most points, wins the tournament. You wonder if there's a way that they can, make it more of a tournament. And I don't know how you do it as the tournament continues to grow. I mean, with 32 teams over the course of 3-4 days, like how are you going to do it? But I don't know. It just feels like, why not have, a winners, like, don't predetermine any of the games. Just do the first game, which is kind of in a tournament bracket, and then play them out. And maybe you do like a losers bracket on the other side, and and somehow you make that work. But it feels like it's confusing, and I think for it to reach its full potential, it's got to be an actual tournament.
Yeah, it went from there were 8 teams initially to 18 this year, projected 32 teams in 2026, and you're right. Right now, it's like a World Cup style setup where teams are in different pools, and you just play the teams inside of your pool. So the opponents are predetermined in a lot of ways. Here's what the Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said about this new partnership.
Excited about it. Listen, guys, at the end of the day, football drives the business, but at the core, at the heartbeat of this conference, it's basketball. And why not bring March Madness to the fall in November? And that's what TNT and that's what the Players here folks are trying to build here. We want to have a vested interest in building that. We're going to have more teams in it next year. We are the number 1 basketball conference in America. In fact, I said it on your air a little while ago. Second to the NBA only. Okay, second best league in the country. Okay, next to the NBA. So we're excited to be partnering, and we think we can grow this thing into something pretty special.
I think the next step, and we can ask Brian about this, it is more of a bracket style, to your point, Ari. Like, that is what I think would drive more fan interest. Like, I know that the environment in the venue this year has been a little bit disappointing in terms of there's NCAA-type games and matchups, but there's not the fan support yet that makes it feel like an NCAA tournament game, even though half of this year's field is ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, we'll have to. Brian Thornton, who's the head of basketball for the Big 12, will join us coming up in about 7 minutes from now. We're gonna have to ask him, like, what does he anticipate the involvement of the Big 12 being, when it comes to this? And again, is there something that makes sense here for the Big 12 to have, a say in the type of tournament this becomes? Because I get it, 32 teams, like, how are you going to play that out as a tournament in 4 days? But it just is weird right now, and it's confusing. And again, like, I think sometimes college sports overthinks things and makes things overly confusing for the sake of, I don't know what, and maybe it doesn't need to balloon to 32 teams, so that you can have more of a tournament feel. But one of the big talking points this week is, the Players era is going to completely remove and take away the Maui. And Maui's so great because, it's been this, high profile tournament every year, and it's played inside this tiny gym, and it's, been a huge boon to the economy in Maui. And I get all that. It makes tons of sense. But like, I think Bill Self laid it out pretty well. Like, it's going to cost you a ton of money to go over to Maui and play in that tournament. Whereas the Players Era, you're actually going to be getting paid, and your players are going to be getting paid to go to the tournament. So it doesn't, like, the net negative far outweighs, or rather the net positive far outweighs the net negative of losing the money in order to go to Maui. And it's cool to take a team to Maui, and I'm sure that it's you want fans go out there. And again, like, I can't imagine traveling to Hawaii and then spending my time inside of a basketball gym. That is just bizarre to me. As much of a college basketball fan as I am, like, I still just wouldn't do that. But I think it's a very real thing, especially as it grows and as the pool of money that is going to be passed out grows. And I mean, there's no doubt it's going to not only pass up the Maui Invitational, but could put it out of business. We could argue whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that is seemingly an inevitability. And so now I think, especially with the Big 12's involvement here, you need to figure out a way to make it better, the Players Era, because the Maui Invitational is still a tournament. Like, there's still a bracket, and you're still advancing to a championship game. So, like, that part of it is less confusing than it is in the Players Era, where it's like there's a bunch of teams, they're all good, but is there any sort of rhyme or reason to why they're playing and when they're playing?
Yeah, very well said. And the Maui has already taken a hit in terms of the schools that are there for this year's Maui Invitational, and the field next year has been watered down significantly in terms of what we're accustomed to. Houston got a win over Syracuse last night at the Players Era. Kansas beat Notre Dame by 10. Flory Badunga had a huge game. Clip 5, Taman. Here's what Bill Self said about the growth that he's seen from the KU big man, Flory Badunga.
Well, he's just an improved player. He's got to score off of angles and do some things athletically, and he played to his athletic ability today, and he's getting better each and every week.
Ari, what was your takeaway from the 10-point KU win?
Yeah, I mean, number one, watching Kansas basketball without Darren Peterson is not fun. Not as much fun as it is watching him with him. But look, I mean, this team has an edge about it. They're competitive. You look at the 3-point shooting, it wasn't great, but it was certainly improved from what we saw when they played against Duke. And that's one of the big stats that I'm looking out for is, I mean, they were 6 of 20 from 3 for 30%. I mean, that's probably at the high end of what you're going to be shooting from Kansas in terms of overall percentages. But yeah, I mean, Flory his growth is incredible. Dude is a racer on the defensive end. I mean, you'll take the few points it's added when he does have a goaltend, but overall, like, his ability to block shots at the rim is incredible. And then, yeah, his post moves. Like, last year, you really couldn't feed him in the post and let him go to work. Like, you really had to set him up with lobs and dunks. And now, I mean, a big part of their offense is in initiating offense from the low block with Flory, and I think that's probably the right move, especially with Darren Peterson off the floor. So, there's probably some positives here in terms of developing depth behind from a scoring standpoint. I think Bryson Tiller's a guy as well that maybe not many people expected him to be doing what he's doing. He's a guy that can defend down low, can rebound the basketball, and I mean, he could score. He did go for 5 for 3. You'd like to see him make at least one of those, but 17 and 9 for Bryson Tiller in the game last night. Another block. So Tiller's a hell of a player too that I don't know that many people expected to see what they're seeing from him.
Yeah. Melvin Council hit a couple of threes for KU. That was good to see. He had been struggling. KU gets the 10-point win. Houston survived overtime against Syracuse, and we'll be joined by Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12. He's coming up next here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios, powered by Modelo. Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. And we're really excited about the Players Era and the agreement between the Big 12 and that tournament that is on the rise. And to break it all down, the VP of Men's Basketball for the Big 12, Brian Thornton. We welcome him to the program. Brian, good morning. You're joining us from Vegas. Man, the Big 12 goes 7-0 yesterday. Not all of those, obviously, at the Players Era, but 4 more bangers on the docket today. Just what does that say about the strength of the league in your eyes?
We're off to a really good start. It's something that we've talked about over the course of the year with our coaches and administrators, just the importance of non-conference play. We've talked about it on this show before, that what you do during the non-conference really sets the stage for what your conference is going to be for the duration of the year. And, we've been fortunate. Right now, we're 21-11 against the other 8-4 in the Big East, which is the best mark of any power conference in the country. That's certainly a great number, but I think the thing that's most impressive, at least from my perspective, is we also lead in attempts. Playing 32 of those games so far is the highest mark amongst those conferences as well. So that goes to show that we're really taking our swings. We've scheduled it in a way that we're putting our teams in position to be successful, but also putting ourselves at risk a little bit too. But so far we've capitalized off of it. And, I hope that our teams can continue to play well, because if we do that, then we'll really put ourselves in a good position going into conference play.
Yeah, and I think, Brian, I'm glad you brought that up, because, just to reiterate, it's what you do in the non-conference that sets up the quad 1, quad 2 situation that really can't be changed much within conference play, because you're playing yourselves. So what you do in November and December sets in motion how big each of those games are down the stretch. And if you're in a situation as a conference where every game you have is a quad 1 or a quad 2, quad 1 losses don't hurt you. So, that's a really good spot for the conference to be in. And I think that's why you're saying, these are really important games that we maybe don't think that way because they're early season.
100%. Last year, in all due respect and fairness, that's what the SEC did. They really capitalized during non-conference play. They had the best record against, like leagues. And then going into conference play, it seemed like every game that their teams played was a value add. And to your point, Ari, when they lost, it wasn't that big of a loss. And as long as they were racking up those wins, if you got 5, 6, 7 conference wins that were all quad 1s, and all of a sudden, how can they keep you out of the NCAA tournament? So hopefully we're setting ourselves up for a similar situation.
Brian, I remember when we caught up with you, I think it was at the Big 12 men's basketball tournament, and we were talking about non-conference, and you mentioned that something was in the works for the Big 12 to strengthen its profile. And now the Big 12, with this new agreement with the Players Era, you guys have locked up basically a quarter of the field with 8 automatic bids when it moves to 32 teams. Just take us through the equity stake, everything behind the scenes that makes this partnership so outstanding for the conference.
I think that if you saw some of the quotes out there from our coaches yesterday, Kelvin Sampson had a quote about, we're doing this because of the resources that are out there, and that we would play in a playground if those resources were out there. And I think that really goes to show, how important the money is in this arms race that has become college athletics and college basketball. And what this deal does is it certainly ensures our programs are going to be a part of that. It ensures that they're going to have the resources to do some things from a roster building standpoint, and it's going to help them continue to put a great product on the floor. And so we're excited that, not only do our top level teams that you're seeing kind of play right now, your Kansas, Houston, Iowa State, Baylor are all playing this year, but when we go to 8 teams, now we have broader access across our entire conference. More teams in our league will have that same access to big-time games, big-time non-conference opportunities, but also they'll have the access to the resources. And those resources continue to allow for those teams to build better tems. And so that's something we think is great. From an equity standpoint, as Commissioner Yormark always talks about, we want to be a different league. And we're working hard to do that day in and day out. And, owning a piece of equity, keeps us in the game. It allows us to potentially share in the upside as a tournament like this continues to grow. I'm out here right now and it feels like an NCAA tournament. The crowds are great. The games have been electric. The matchups have been extremely close. The games have been fantastic. So I think when you think about, okay, if this is what 16, 18 teams looks like, what does 32 teams look like going into the future when people continue to pour into it? And, if this thing blows up, then we want to make sure that we're a part of the future of an event like this.
So what is the Big 12's involvement in this? And, I guess since you oversee basketball for the Big 12, what is your involvement going to be in this tournament moving forward?
We're partners. I think that's the thing that that is shown through working with Seth Berger and Ian Orphis, who have been fantastic. The people who are putting this event on. We are in this thing together, and the fact that we signed up to be partners allows us not that we're decision makers per se, but we have a seat at the table. And as decisions continue to be made about the future, about media rights, about field, how the tournament is run, then we're going to be able to provide input. I wouldn't say that we're a silent partner, but think about that in terms of when you're investing in a company or something like that, and we get the opportunity to put our 2 cents in, so to speak, and help to shape this tournament, which is an awesome opportunity.
Talking with Brian Thornton here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard on TuneIn, seen on Big 12 Studios, VP of men's basketball for the Big 12. So with this, Brian, with this 32-team format for 2026, what does that look like? Is it? I think I read it's going to be kind of like a World Cup type format, and have there been discussions about maybe moving this into a full-on bracket type format moving forward? Just what do you see, or what would you like to see for the Players Era?
Well, I think that the format that we're going to, it feels like the right format to go to, at least initially, because you have to think, we're doing this tournament over a pretty short window. So unlike, the NCAA tournament where you're doing it over the course of 3 weeks, that's a little bit different in terms of a full bracket. And also with this, we also have to ensure that our teams get a minimum of 3 games as well. And so, there'll be pool play, very similar to what you see right now, 4 pools of 8. And then each of those pools will generate a winner, and those winners will play in a kind of a mini event that'll be a little bit later on in the month of November or early December. And, that'll be an awesome opportunity because that way there'll be a champion. We will be able to crown a champion out of this event. And then we'll have like a third, fourth place game as well.
Got it. Okay, so it is moving to more of a tournament format as opposed to this current situation, which is pool play. And then I think it's like one game, which if you have the most wins or most points, you're the winner of it. Is that? It's confusing, Brian, clearly.
I would say it's probably a little bit more of a hybrid model. It's not going to be a traditional tournament because you can't. When you're playing 3 games in pool play, there can be multiple teams that have 3-0 records, for example, out of an 18 pool, or 2-1 or whatever the case may be. So, we'll have to figure out, the best ways to break ties. Is it point differential? Is it KenPom? Are there metrics involved? Like, we'll have to figure out the best way to create a winner out of each of our pools or each of the pools that they have, and then take that into a Final Four situation, which would only be a one additional game. It wouldn't be, a Final Four in the traditional model where you're playing 2 games. It would just be a 1 game for the first and second place championship, and then a third, fourth place game as well. Again, just because you have to think about the way our schedule is condensed. We're doing this over a short period of time. And also, none of our teams are going to play more than 4 games as a part of this event.
Brian, can you share with our listeners and our viewers the NIL piece? So I know that teams that are participating get X amount of dollars, but then do teams get more based off of where you finish in the field in terms of the standings? How does that all work?
There's a ton of moving parts when it comes to this NIL world. I think that we're all trying to build the plane while flying it. And so is the Players Era. I think that they've had a really great model. They put the players first. They've really invested in the NIL process, and it's something that, our teams have really leaned into across the country, not just Big 12 teams. I think all the teams here have really leaned into that. I think that as we look at the future of NIL, it's important to recognize that now after we have the settlement and, we utilize a platform called NIL Go, that all of the deals that student athletes make have to go through a vetting process. They have to be cleared. Obviously, just like NIL in any sense, the players that have the biggest profiles, that have the biggest followings, that maybe even have the most success are going to be the student athletes that have the greatest opportunity to capitalize off NIL. And in an event like that, this is no different.
We're talking with Brian Thornton here from Big 12, overseeing basketball. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Brian, I'm curious for your thoughts. I mean, I know one of the major rule changes we talked about with you at the spring meetings back in Orlando was the coaching challenges were now going to be on the coaches as opposed to, allowing officials to go to monitors at given times to figure out calls. How do you think that's gone so far? That's one. And then two, what are some of the other rule changes that maybe we haven't been as highly publicized, or is that kind of the biggest one?
That's certainly the biggest one and probably the most controversial. I think it's been good so far. I think that one of the reasons that we went to that model, or the NCAA went to that model, was to speed up games. There was a feeling that, especially late in games, that, you constantly saw, players and coaches spinning their fingers to have officials review plays, oftentimes reviewing plays to kind of create a bonus timeout versus it actually being a legitimate play. But our officials also wanted to make sure they got it right. So they went to the monitor probably more than they should have, and it lengthened the time of games in a way that became uncomfortable. And so we have certainly, at least it feels like, I don't have the data to back it up quite yet, but it feels like games are moving a little faster. They're a little bit more smooth, but it also creates some challenges and some decisions for our coaches. As the rule works, you get one challenge. If you get it right, you get a second challenge, but that's it. It's a max of 2 challenges for the entire game, and you have to have a timeout in order to utilize your challenge. So coaches have to be very strategic in the way that they approach this. You're probably not going to use a challenge in the first half unless it's, totally egregious and for sure that you're going to get it right, because you don't want to risk a timeout and you don't want to risk not having your challenge to use later on in the game if you need it. So they have to be very strategic in their approach. Officials actually need to kind of get comfortable with being uncomfortable. They have to get comfortable understanding that there's going to be some missed calls, that it's a game of human error, and the officials are doing the very best they can. I noticed in a few recent games that, officials, when maybe there is a questionable call, one that they're not 100% sure about, they're taking a little bit of extra time before they're putting the ball back in play to kind of give the coaching staffs an opportunity to get on their iPad and use DV Sport and figure out, is that a play that we should challenge? Now, I do think that's something we should clean up, because that's not the way the rules should be designed. If you see it and you want to challenge it, you should challenge it. But it shouldn't be that you have a million angles to look at before you make that decision. The officials certainly don't have that discretion when they're making the call in the first place.
Yeah, I love that mindset, Brian. I'm in favor of all that. Last thing for me is, so the Big 12 will get the 8 automatic bids. Will that be like when we look at the Big 12 tournament, the teams that are seeded 1 through 8 that finished in the top 8 in the standings, or are you guys still kind of working out how that will be determined?
I think that's probably the easiest way to look at it, but there's some other kind of stipulations that go along with it. You talked about the teams that are already currently in the tournament, Houston, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas. They have pre-existing contracts for the next few years. So they're kind of grandfathered into the tournament, so to speak. And so we have 4 additional slots that will open up that our teams are all kind of vying for. Now, we're fortunate that we have a lot of different opportunities that our teams are participating in, whether it be ESPN events, Fox neutral site games, or just other games that our teams would like to participate in, so that there is some flexibility for our teams that, if they finish in a position to be a part of the Players Era, if in a given year they decide that they want to play in Maui or they want to play in the Bahamas or whatever, they have the discretion to do so. They can opt out. And then what that does is that opens up another position for another team maybe a little further down the line in our league, which again, that goes back to the access, the more broad access across the league, which benefits all.
Yeah, the more the better. Awesome stuff, man. This is exciting. Brian Thornton, VP of Men's Basketball for the Big 12, joining us from the Players Era out in Vegas. Brian, we appreciate you hopping on short notice.
Absolutely. Happy to do it anytime, guys. Great seeing you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You
You
too,
as
bud.
well.
Thank you.
You as well. Brian Thornton, VP of Men's Basketball for the Big 12, joining us to break down the new deal between the Big 12 and the Players Era Festival out in Vegas. We head into hour number 3 of the program. Coming up next, we'll be giving thanks to some various things throughout the Big 12. Also, Matt Fortuna from College Football Insider, founder of the Inside Zone, will join us here next hour as we pivot back and forth. Football, basketball, it's crossover season. We're all in. This is the Big 12. This is a different league here on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. We are also on Big 12 Studios. If you missed any of our interviews, we just talked with Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12. You can go back and listen wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, right here, TuneIn, on demand. T-Chains has already posted our interview that we had this morning with Pete Sousa from ESPN, NBC, and Inside the 12 here on Big 12 Studios. Alongside Ari Timken, I'm James Westling. All right, Ari, we're just a couple of days away from Thanksgiving, things we are thankful for in the Big 12. I'll start with all these five-star freshmen on the hardwood because we just talked with Brian Thornton, basically turning the Big 12 into the G League with Koa Pete and A.J. DeBonsa and Darren Peterson, even though we haven't seen much of him yet. The kid at Houston, Chris Sinak, and Kingston Flemings has been phenomenal for Houston, who survived against Syracuse last night in overtime. So I'll lead with that, man. I'm extremely thankful that the Big 12 has this partnership with the Players Era because it's going to be really good for the league as this tournament continues to grow and more people get on board with all these high-profile schools taking over Las Vegas.
So, number one, James, you're thankful for Big 12 hoops. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Number one thing in my life is Big 12 basketball.
Well, let me just start by saying, James, number one, more than anything, I'm thankful for you, buddy, and all of the incredible work that you do each and every day to bring us this incredible show. So, unlike you, I'm going to thank you for this wonderful feast that we're about to enjoy, which is our show every day. Thank you, buddy.
Okay,
Make you feel bad or what?
I can't read your sarcasm meter, number one. I can't read the sarcasm font.
That was not sarcastic at all. This is a very straightforward, very genuine segment in which we are sitting around a Thanksgiving Day table, as most are wont to do, to go around and say the things we're thankful for. And you were most thankful for Big 12 hoops, which that's your prerogative. I am most thankful for Big 12 James Westling.
Well, I would say that you're my favorite Ari, number one, and then number two, ditto. Ditto. We put a lot of work into this show. We have great chemistry. So I'm thankful that you went to Kansas and that we have a lot of stuff there that we can jab at one another. I'm thankful for our roast segment each and every day. It's my favorite.
No, but you already said number one was Big 12 hoops, so you can't walk it back and say ditto. It's okay. No, it's okay, James. I get it. I totally understand, and it's understandable. But no, you can't walk that back. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. I'm also thankful for Modelo, by the way, which has helped me get through a 5-6 Kansas football season so far at a 4-2 Kansas basketball season, with Kansas getting its first Power 5 win yesterday against Notre Dame. So cheers to you, the full-time fan, and all of you full-time fans out there like me that are watching. And I mean, we had soccer have a great year for Kansas and lose in the Sweet 16. Would love to see them go further. Hopefully volleyball goes far for Kansas. Big season there. Maybe Kansas women's basketball will have a great year. So I'm thankful for Modelo, which so far has helped me get through the good and the bad when it comes to Kansas athletics right now.
So KU could potentially end up with the same record that they had last year in football.
Yes, you're just now figuring that out?
It's just kind of hitting me that this year and last year were so different in how they played out, but they're going to end up with the exact same record, which is it's blowing my mind.
Well, and last year, like the vibes were good at this part of the year because, they had won a bunch of games consecutively against ranked opponents. I mean, they knocked off BYU, basically knocked BYU out of the Big 12 title picture. I mean, it was the first time ever that 3 consecutive ranked wins for an unranked team in the history of college football. And now, I mean, Kansas was 4-2. So when you think about the fact that they 6 games in were 4-2 with 6 games left, and now they're going to have to, win their final game against Utah in order to get to bowl eligibility. I mean, it's a totally different animal in terms of the momentum in this program right now. I mean, they have lost 4 of their last 5. And, I mean, they beat Oklahoma State, which is the one win, thankfully. But, my God, everybody's beaten Oklahoma State. So, I mean, losses to Texas Tech, Kansas State, Arizona, Iowa State, and we'll see what happens with Utah. But, it's not all 5 and 7 seasons are created equal. And I would say this one is probably worse than last year, considering at least last year they put together some momentum at the end of the year, which made you feel good about this year. And this year, I'm just not sure how to feel about it. They've completely stumbled down the stretch of this season.
Like, if we were power ranking the middle part of the Big 12, Iowa State, TCU, and Kansas State are all 4-4 in league play. Baylor and Kansas are 3-5. Like, how would you power rank those 5 teams? Iowa State, TCU, K-State, Baylor, Kansas. That's what it looks like on paper in the Big 12 standings.
Probably in that same order. Iowa State 1, Kansas State 2, TCU 3, Baylor 4, Kansas 5.
Hard to disagree. Like, the thing about Iowa State being in that mix is I think it's Iowa State and everybody else. Like, K-State has a win over TCU. TCU has a win over Baylor. Kansas has a win over nobody from that bunch.
Yeah, and, ultimately, I don't think Lance Leipold's job is in jeopardy heading into next season. However, I do think next season will go a long way in his future. And, look, I mean, Kansas now is at a point where they have expectations. And so, certainly you've got to give credit to Lance Leipold for getting the program to where it is now, because this was just a moribund program that was, kept redefining rock bottom, quite frankly. I mean, I've said it over and over again, but this was a FCS program playing in the Big 12 for a decade. The most competitive games that Kansas had for a decade were against FCS opponents. That's it. The other games were not competitive at all. They were an FCS opponent playing, an FCS team playing in the Big 12. So, they've risen above that. And now there are expectations. And so, in some ways, Leipold is a victim of his own expectations that he helped set. But, I just don't care. Like, if you consider yourself a viable, Power 5 conference team, you just 5 and 7 is just not good enough, and especially given the talent level that Kansas had this year. I mean, this was a big year for KU from a talent standpoint, and I think to finish 5 and 7, which is at this point the most likely outcome, is a huge disappointment. So I think last year was kind of last year. You lost Andy Kotelnicki, and probably hiring Jeff Grimes was a mistake. But this year is totally different types of flaws, and they fall squarely on the head coach and some of the decision making. And now there's expectations for this program. And so, whereas 3-4 years ago there was no expectations, now there are. And so, you need to keep winning in order to garner fan support. Like, as unfair as that might be, that's just the reality of the situation.
Man, this has been a wild week from Big 12 coaching perspectives and the different reactions that coaches have had when it comes to their seasons shaking out the way that they have. Like, Chris Klieman gets really emotional post-game. And Chris Klieman, the way he handles the media, the K-State football coach, there's been support from the media. D. Scott Fritchen, who's covered K-State for 4 decades, notes that his career winning percentage is 4th among current college football coaches that have been in the profession for at least 10 seasons. He's got 5 AP top 10 wins, which is the most of any active Big 12 program since 2019. And then you've got Dave Aranda at Baylor who's saying, I should have been better to the media. I should be better to the media and connect more with the fans through them moving forward. And Lance Leipold at Kansas and Scott Frost at UCF, they were both asked about Chris Klieman getting emotional after his press conference following the loss to Utah. Let's hear what Lance Leipold said first. This is the KU coach being asked about the K-State football coach and his reaction to K-State's loss to Utah.
I reached out to Chris yesterday, and like I said, for a lot of us, when expectations in today's world of college football and what's going around and what you see, there's disappointments and frustrations and these jobs, and I know people get into the salaries we make as coaches and things like that, but we didn't get into this, and I know Chris didn't either for what the paycheck is. That's not how he started. That's not what drives him, and to see that, it's like I say, not somebody that's at the rival school, but as a friend and a colleague, I reached out because I hope he's doing well, and I know this, and as he articulated, and I feel the same about our guys. As you go through the ups and downs and the tough losses and things like that, we really love our kids. We love the guys we work with, and the players we get to coach and work with on a daily basis, and a lot of times that gets lost today.
Now let's hear what Scott Frost said, the head coach at UCF. Here was his reaction to Chris Klieman's emotional presser following K-State's loss to Utah.
Yeah, people don't realize when they're yelling at guys like Chris or me or any other coach out there how much we put into it. And there's no fan that cares more than we do. There's no fan that cares more about the players than we do, that wants to win worse than we do. Sometimes you got a great situation and it's easy. Sometimes it's a lot harder and you may or may not get there. It's hard to win every game every year. And I think people are a little impatient, and he's a passionate guy. I've got a ton of respect for him. He's a really good coach, so I'm not surprised when coaches have emotional outbursts. On top of everything, we're really tired this time of year because it's 14-hour days for 4 months without a day off, except maybe on a bye week. So it gets to you, but he cares a lot, like we all do, and wish him the best, except when we're playing him.
Man, that to me, both of those comments are really cool to hear. Like, you talk about Big 12 coaches supporting other coaches, and it's almost like Leipold and Frost are echoing what Chris Klieman went through during that post-game presser. Like, it's a reminder of the hard work that goes into it and how much these coaches actually care, despite what the fans might say about their level of caring.
Yeah, I mean, if a fan needs to be reminded, or a person needs to be reminded, like, nobody wants to win more than Chris Klieman, then they have no clue to begin. I think it's a great sentiment, and it's impossible to disagree because he's right? Like, nobody cares more about the players and the coaches that are involved that are, putting their careers in the line in order to do that. I also, we know, because we see it, the insane hours that coaches put in. And, you hope that fans and media have a sense of that when they are critical or criticize or whatever. But also, a lot of people work hard, and maybe they don't work as many hours as football coaches do, but they're also not making the same money that football coaches do. And I'm not, disparaging that. It is a very difficult business. When you think about the Power Five, there's only a set amount of those jobs that are open, and so they're extremely competitive. They're tough to get, and they're even tougher to keep. So that's the reason that football coaches get paid that much, right? We're all on the same page here. Any job that has a extremely limited amount of access that necessitates an insane amount of hours is most likely going to be a more high-paying job, right? It's more competitive. People want to do it. There's more people vying for those positions, and there's less positions open. So it's going to be competitive.
Yeah.
But I also get fans don't care to hear about the amount of hours that they're putting in, because fans also work and they're not making the same amount of money that coaches do. And I get it. It's not the same hours and it's not the same, but it's there's it's a two-way street. When Scott Frost says that, it's yeah, but do you also recognize that the fans that are buying your product and paying for your, essentially paying your salary, they also don't want to hear, they also work and don't care that you're also working, it's a two-way street. It's why I think a lot of coaches don't ever bring that up.
Right.
There is an insane standard now in today's world for coaches. And look, I mean, we're guilty of it too when we're talking about coaches that are on the hot seat, and there is a huge level of impatience. And, a coach, Chris Klieman's the perfect example of this. The fact that people are calling for Chris Klieman's job right now shows you the absurd expectations that exist within college football right now. Like, even to a degree, Dave Aranda, and we could sit here and argue that Dave Aranda should probably be let go, but like, even with that, like, coaches are not afforded very many bad seasons. And when you go back and look, I mean, James, when Bill Snyder had K-State running, I mean, I'm talking about the first iteration of Snyder in the 90s and early 2000s. So when he had it rolling, he went 1-10, 5-6, 7-4, 5-6 in his first 4 years. You could argue that he, in some cases, in today's world, Snyder doesn't get a fifth year, but he does in the case of K-State. He goes 9-2-1, then 9-3, 10-2, 9-3, 11-1, 11-2, 11-1, 11-3. I mean, that is a ridiculous 4-year stretch where he won 44 football games. Then they graduate, everybody goes 6-6, and then they're back 11-2, 11-4. So for K-State specifically, that's the reason that Chris Klieman is dealing with this criticism, right? I mean, it's not good enough to have an off year. It's not good enough to have 2 off years. And that's a Bill Snyder standard that not even he lived up to fully when he came back. Now, we did win 11 games and 10 games a couple of times, 9-4, 9-4, but like winning 11 games every year is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen in today's world. It's a totally different era.
Decade of dominance under Coach Snyder.
I mean, look, 9-4, 9-4, 10-4, 8-5. What are we talking about here?
Right.
Like, this is the last 4 seasons for Chris Klieman. 9-4, 9-4, 10-4, 8-5.
Yep.
What are we talking about?
And this down year, still in a position to make a bowl. Coming up next year on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn, watching us on Big 12 Studios, Matt Fortuna from the Inside Zone, InsideZoneMF.com. He's going to join us coming up next as we touch on more college football around the corner. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league on TuneIn. Big 12 Today here on Big 12 Radio, powered by Modelo. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios with Ari Timken. I'm James Westling, T-Chains on the controls, and we welcome in Matt Fortuna from Inside Zone, the Inside Zone, InsideZoneMF.com. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Morning, James. How you doing?
Man, tell us about your site, your business, everything that you do with the Inside Zone, because, man, you're covering so much stuff, the analytics, the coaching movement, all of it when it comes to college football.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I started the Inside Zone 2023, right ahead of that season, and I guess it was a good time being a Chicago-based reporter because the Big Ten has somehow, some way become the belle of the ball in college football, whether it's on the field with winning the last 2 national championships or off the field where they just keep making headlines. The conference expansion wave started right around the time I was launching this site, so that was good. And been really pleased with the turnout. Been great to get to different parts of the country, to go to a lot of games, get FaceTime with a lot of coaches, players, administrators, and just trying to cover college football in as thorough a way as possible without getting bogged down by all the listicles and all the clickbait that can annoy us all from time to time.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I encourage everybody to check out InsideZoneMF.com and make sure to subscribe to the newsletter and become a paid member of the Inside Zone. But, it's funny, Matt, heading into the season for the Big 12, we thought this could be the year of the quarterback, so many great quarterbacks with Sawyer Robertson and Sam Leavitt and, just so many big names and guys we thought could end up becoming, first-round picks, and it has not worked out that way. So it once again continues to be a league that is being dominated by running offenses. So the Inside Zone fits here.
Exactly. With the pun on the name, I could do a little bit of basketball too. It's Feast Week. There's a lot going on. I know Houston and the Big 12 in particular are big hits out in Vegas for the Players Era tournament this week. But no, I'm with you. Last year, Arizona State picked last to finish in the league, ends up winning the league. This year, we're looking at his quarterback league. Best team in the league is Texas Tech, and they're doing it on defense, which is still I got to reprogram my brain, right, to recognize that program being this good, but by doing it on the defensive side of the ball with a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate at linebacker, Jacob Rodriguez.
Matt, what's your take on BYU? I ask because you had a tweet a few days ago. All this man does is win, and that's Kalani Sitake, and that's been BYU football the last 2 years. But here, once again, looking like they're on the outside looking in of the college football playoff rankings. It'll come out later tonight, that third installment. So I'm just curious, because you cover all these programs, all these conferences, what's your take on what's been happening with BYU?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The guy's won 10 or more games in 4 of the last 6 seasons, one of which was a COVID season where he won 10 games. And say what you want about Zach Wilson's NFL career, he did develop and put in the number 2 draft pick at quarterback in the NFL. So I think when you look at the decade plus he's been there and what he's been able to do, and I mean this respectfully to BYU and their fans, but how's his name not one of the hot names for bigger jobs right now? We see a lot of big jobs open. Who wouldn't want this guy coaching their program, seeing what he's done at BYU, and with the limitations he has at BYU from a recruiting standpoint as well? So I think he's done a phenomenal job. Vegas hates him, which is the ultimate sign of an overachiever, right? Both last year and this year, they get off to those 7-0 starts, and some of those games might be a little flukier than others, but you're watching, you're like, you do this enough times, it's not a fluke, right? You're winning on the margins. You know how to get the most out of your team and to figure out how to put more points on the scoreboard than the guy on the other sideline. And I think Kalani Sitake has been an expert at that. And keep in mind, he lost his starting quarterback at the 11th hour this offseason, a good starting quarterback in Jake Retzlaff. So I don't think he's gotten nearly enough national credit for what he's done, not just this year, but throughout his entire tenure in Provo.
And I'm really glad you sort of separated that from the playoff talk, because I think you're right. On the one hand, what they're doing this season, what Kalani Sitake has done overall is incredible. But do you think that some of that, quietness around the program has played into why it doesn't appear that they're in position to get an at-large bid? Because we looked at the Big 12 this year and thought this could be a multiple bay league, and basically up until last week's rankings, it looked like that could be the case. And now, unless there's some craziness that happens to the SEC over the next week, I'm not sure that that's the case. Do you think, though, that there should be a little bit of credibility or equity, I should say, from last few years?
There should be, and I don't blame BYU or any of them for going out going about their business the way they are. I'm not saying they need to puff their chest out a little bit more or sell themselves a little bit more. But like when I think of like blue collar programs, right, and teams that are going to be the toughest team on the field that day, I think of a Kalani Sitake coach program. I mean, they've just proven it time and time again. I mean, their quarterback wears number 47 is the first name Bear, right? Like, you do not want to play a team like that, whether it's a Tuesday in November or a playoff game in December or January. I mean, they're just always going to out-toughen you. Look, I don't think they've been – I honestly thought initially they would get knocked more for that Texas Tech loss. I'm glad they didn't. And look, for all this talk we're having right now, they still do control their own destiny. Which might be the best case scenario for the Big 12, because I do think if BYU wins a rematch with Texas Tech on a neutral field, the Big 12 probably gets 2 teams into the field, which obviously would be a tremendous boon for the conference.
Talking with Matt Fortuna, the Inside Zone, InsideZoneMF.com. And Matt, you note here that Florida State is bringing back Mike Norvell for what will be his 7th season. We've seen a similar situation with Dave Aranda getting a vote of confidence. He'll be back next year for Baylor. Your thoughts on the coaching carousel? Like, we had all these guys getting fired, historic numbers first half of the year, and now we're getting guys that maybe we thought would be getting canned, and they're going to be back next season.
Yeah, when you see Penn State fire a coach who was a play away from the national championship game last year, when you see LSU fire Brian Kelly, all these big-name programs firing big-name coaches in the middle of the season, you're prepared for a carousel like no other. And we certainly could still get that. Lane Kiffin alone is doing his best to, pump up the value for all these coaches and for us in the media to talk about as he gets ready for the Egg Bowl here. I do wonder, though, if you're a team that's on the fringe, like, say, a Baylor, like, say, a Florida State, although I don't think those two are in the same situation right now, do you look around at the market and think, do we really want to get in the market this year where we're probably not going to get our top choice if that's who we want? We're probably going to get whoever everyone else didn't hire. And again, Baylor, I think, is a unique situation. I thought it was 50-50 to begin with. The fact that they don't have an athletic director right now, I think it's a pretty easy decision. You don't want to fire a coach when you don't know what your entire organizational structure is going to look like from an athletic department standpoint. Florida State, I'm not surprised because they're always crying poor there. That said, you look at a program like them who's won 3 national titles since 1993 that fired Willie Taggart saying 6-6 isn't good enough, and what they've shown on the field the last 2 years and on the recruiting trail. And I just have a hard time understanding what their approach is. And it's crazy, right? Like, we could think Coach X is going to be a great hire, and 9 times out of 10 we'll be right. Look at Mike Norvell. I mean, this guy was a minute away from being the Alabama coach two years ago after taking Florida State to an undefeated regular season. And I don't think he forgot how to coach overnight, but it certainly seems that way based on the product on the field the last 2 years.
We're talking with Matt Fortuna here inside ZoneMF.com. I'm curious for kind of your overall thoughts on big picture on college football. Like, is Ohio State right now the team that you think wins 2 straight championships? Do you think it's wide open? Give me your sense big picture here.
I think Ohio State is the clear number 1, but I don't think they're unbeatable. And I'm monitoring. I saw Michigan up close here at Wrigley a couple of weeks ago against Northwestern. I thought, boy, this Michigan team's going to have no chance against Ohio State. No, we've said that before and been wrong. However, you see Ohio State the last couple of weeks without Carnell Tate and without Jeremiah Smith, and you're like, all right, they look a lot different without those 2 big dogs at receiver, right? Julian Sain doesn't look like a Heisman candidate at quarterback. He looks like a good quarterback who's going to try to throw some third string receivers open, which you might not be able to do when you get to the playoff, or even this week against Michigan. I don't know the outlook for both these guys. I imagine Jeremiah Smith plays. It sounds like they were holding him out more for precautionary issues. Carnell Tate, I believe, is dealing with a calf issue, and those things can be tricky. So I don't know what the short and long-term prognosis is for him. That said, they're on track right now to be the first defense to hold opponents under 10 points per game since Alabama in, I think, 2011. I mean, this is a historically dominant defense at every single level right now. I know they haven't faced the greatest offenses in the world on that schedule so far this season, but they're just absolutely suffocating opponents. I mean, they're winning games, and kind of like what I was saying earlier about Texas Tech, they're winning games differently than what I've seen before. This is not, your father's Ohio State of 45-0. It's 31-10, and that 10's usually a backdoor touchdown at the end by a bunch of second stringers. They are just sucking the life out of teams offensively, and I think when you play that style of ball, it translates week to week. They'd probably be my pick to win it all, but I don't think they're unbeatable. I will say that.
And it's really interesting too. We talked about this, I think it was last week, the numbers that like they're not on the field very much. So like not only are they dominating defensively, like they're limiting snaps. I think they're like 111 less snaps than Texas Tech. And so I mean it's almost like they're using the regular season as like a tune-up for the postseason.
It feels that way a little bit, and we'll see whether these receivers play or not, whether that ended up being the case. But, they did a little of that, I thought, last year, less intentionally because they lost 2 games. But, I don't think they really let Will Howard spread his wings as a runner until the playoff, because I think they knew they were probably going to be a playoff team. They didn't know anything about the depth they had behind them. They wanted to protect him for the regular season. And are they doing that again this year? Probably a little bit with those wide receivers. I have been impressed with the strides they made in the running game. I was not impressed with them at all at the beginning of the season, but Bo Jackson and that group have come on nicely. I still think they throw to set up the run, kind of the opposite of what everyone else does, and they need to be at full strength in order to do that.
Matt, last weekend, there weren't a lot of crazy upsets that we get this time of year, typically in late November. Do you think that was just kind of a one-off, or do you think that's a byproduct of the transfer portal, NIL, and even though there's some new blood in the top 10 this year, that it's still this huge separation gap because of how these rosters have been constructed?
Well, it's SEC FCS week, right? So automatically you're wiping off a bunch of teams that are potentially an upset alert. The Big Ten as well did not have the strongest schedule last week. I mean, the big noon game was Rutgers, Ohio State. Michigan's playing at Maryland. Both those teams usually play a not great team before they face each other in the final week. Penn State, Nebraska qualified as a primetime game, and Penn State played well, but I don't think you look at that game and think, wow, great win, or hey, what happened in Nebraska? It's kind of what people expected to happen. So we've seen a lot of crazy weeks like the ones you mentioned before. I expect nothing less this week. I mean, shoot, we did get that Pitt Georgia Tech game last week, which on paper was an upset and surprised me. Just haven't seen Pitt a week before against Notre Dame look like they didn't belong in the same league. This is now a team that's a legitimate ACC title contender and really wrecked Georgia Tech season, because that was a team that was, if they win, they're in. Now they're probably not in. And, oh, by the way, you got to play a very angry Georgia team this week as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I'm curious, Matt, do you think with the way the bracket shaped up last week with 5 SEC teams, Notre Dame, I mean, do you think that's the playoff bracket we're going to end up seeing, or do you think we're going to see some craziness this weekend?
Yeah. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I think Michigan's in, and that's going to take away a spot from someone else who's on the bubble right now. If BYU wins out and beats Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game, again, I think that takes away a spot from someone who's on the bubble right now. I don't foresee too many upsets, at least this week. And I would keep an eye on Oregon. That's a rivalry game at Washington. Washington has had their number when they go to Seattle. Washington's a much better team at home this year than they are on the road. I don't know if 10-2 Oregon is out, though, right? Like, I think they have a pretty strong strength of schedule and a pretty strong case. We'll see tonight whether they move Oregon ahead of Texas Tech or not after beating USC last week. But it's going to be interesting to see, right? Like, the team I feel bad for watching all this is Vanderbilt. If they win and beat Tennessee, they'll have the first 10-win regular season in school history. 10-2 in the SEC. I mean, think about it. Last year we were debating whether 9-3 SEC teams should be in. I don't know if 10-2 Vanderbilt gets in, and that would be a shame for a school like that where it's literally the best season in school history.
It's a really good point. Parallels between Vanderbilt and BYU in terms of the seasons that they're having and have had the last couple of years. Matt Fortuna from InsideZoneMF.com, the Inside Zone. Appreciate your time, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too, bud. Thank you.
Matt Fortuna, you can subscribe to the Inside Zone at InsideZoneMF.com. Joining us here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio to break down everything happening in college football. We'll wrap up the show coming up next with the final whistle. Ari Timken, James Westling, Big 12 Radio. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio one final time, exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios, powered by Modelo. I'm still trying to shake that when we did our Things We're Thankful For segment, I said Big 12 basketball, and Ari said me, yours truly. So I've got the sentimental scaries because I was not prepared for that. I thought we were roasting each other, so that really threw me off. I'm still shook by that whole thing. But we'll bounce back.
Also, is it true what you said? You don't know where Canada is? Is that what you said during the break?
Timeout. If you have to question if I know where Canada is, then I have a lot more questions.
I thought that's what you said during the break. I don't want to. Obviously, some of the things we talk about during the break are not for air, but I don't want to put you on blast. But I could have sworn you said that during the break you don't know where Canada is. I just wanted to get clarification on that. Are you aware geographically of where the country of Canada is located?
Bro, I will out geography you all day. All day.
This is not a competition. I didn't know if that's what I heard. What did I hear? What did you say?
Well, I'm about to power rank my top 20 favorite Canadian cities. Okay?
20?
Easily.
There is 20. A 0% chance you can name 20 Canadian cities.
You don't think I can name 20 Canadian cities?
No.
I don't think there are 20 Canadian cities.
There's easily 20. Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, go Grizzlies. And then it just keeps going and going. I don't want to bore you guys.
At least give us some obvious ones here. Are you serious? Calgary, Ottawa.
I don't want to bore you guys. Okay, Calgary, Ottawa, Winnipeg. They're big, huge. About 8 hours straight north of the border. Okay. I don't want to bore you with my Canadian geography, which I will crush you in. All right. So let's pivot.
I'm still waiting for 15 more.
Well, you're not going to have to wait long. All right, I'll tell you that.
Are there any Canadian cities that you know that do not have professional sports teams?
That do not have professional sports teams? That's a fair question. Probably not. Probably not. What about you? Taman's shaking his head like he's this Canadian savant.
Listen,
come on, T-Chains. Put him in his place.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't name the capital of Ottawa. Like Ari had to say it. I mean, at least give the capital of the country. Come on, James. If you're gonna if you're gonna come out on air and say, I can name 20 cities in the country of Canada, and you can only name 3, and not even the capital of the country, that's just come on.
New Harbor, Bennington Heights.
Oh, you Googled
come on, guys.
AI.
100% Googled that.
I didn't Google anything. My hands are free. They're right here. I made them up on the spot. All right. I've got...
Those aren't even real places.
No. Hey, all right. So you don't have any pets in your house, correct?
Just my kids.
Okay, right. Small children, same thing. So I've got the pet for you, okay?
Yeah, but I'm not looking for a pet, James.
But I've got the pet for you. I think you're going to like this one. Basically, long story short, dogs, cats, and now raccoons. Raccoons are showing signs of being domesticated. This is a real thing. Scientists have found that raccoons that live near people now have shorter noses than raccoons that are out in the country. Why? Because they live off our trash. The ones that are brave enough to dig through our garbage, but not so wild that they scare people, are the ones that get the most food. And those traits get passed down. That's how dogs and cats first got close to humans thousands of years ago. They hung around our trash, and by eating our food, they slowly became calmer and more domestic, which is what's happening with raccoons.
I don't buy it.
What do you mean you don't buy it? They looked at 20,000 photos. Scientists say that raccoons are starting to look and act more domesticated. Animals that become calmer around humans start to go through physical changes with shorter faces, smaller heads, floppier ears, patches of white fur. All things check when it comes to the raccoon family.
Yeah, no. I buy that. Let me get this straight here. I buy the science behind what you're saying. I don't buy this like, well, now we suddenly need to have raccoons in our house. You know, like the leap from. I also didn't know that like, is there like a shortage of domesticated animals that we need to have as pets? Like, you've got dogs and cats. Some people have guinea pigs or hamsters or gerbils or snakes or reptiles. Like, were we really looking for more animals that we needed to have in our homes? Was it like there's a shortage of animals, especially furry ones that are small? Is there any other animals we might think about having in our houses?
Listen,
a raccoon. Look at how approachable those look with their disgusting tails. And I'll tell you the thing that freaks me out the most about raccoons is the fingers. They've got these like hands with fingers. It's very freaky. I couldn't look a raccoon in the face without freaking out.
Yeah, I don't like them either. We had one in our garage a few months ago, and I didn't go back for quite some time in that part of the house. Like, I saw that tail, and I was like, I'm out.
I'm out. And for that reason, I'm out.
I was jogging one time, and I was passing a raccoon. It was just literally staying at a stop sign. I just looked at it, and then I started sprinting. It didn't follow me, but it creeped me out.
Well, they're actually very smart. And as they eat more of our garbage, our trash, these trash pandas are inching closer to being domesticated to where we can have them as pets. And a lot of people think they're adorable. So the next step are these researchers want to check the raccoon genetics and stress levels to see where we're at on the stress meter. Can they be in our house? Will they eat not only our food, but maybe other pets if they're not quite ready? And then they're thinking, hey, let's take this thing to a whole nother level. Let's check the armadillos. Let's check the possums. Let's just run the table of domestication.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah, that's a hard no for me.
Yeah, let's not. No. No. I mean,
Can I ask one important question on this? James, you said at the beginning that this was a pet for Ari. Why is this a pet for Ari?
Because he has a pet-free house and he needs a pet.
But not that pet.
Yeah, no, you don't go from not having pets to a raccoon, James. You go from not having pets to a small dog.
Yeah,
no, that's what you go.
If you want him to have a non-traditional pet, not a dog or a cat, have him have a fish, not a raccoon.
No, I think no. He's got to just dip his toes into the pool with a raccoon because they have 3.5% shorter noses than these wild raccoons. But it's so I learned through this rabbit hole that I went down that dogs weren't just dogs all the time. Dogs were like these giant wolf-like creatures, and then over time, because they started eating our food, they started to kind of get watered down into these calmer, more friendlier dogs. And then cats, the same thing. They were like these mountain lion cats that then went to bobcats, and now they're house cats. It's just fascinating to me how it all works by eating our food. So what is in our food that makes these things more human-like?
Well, I mean, I think it's the food is part of it. Also, you didn't know that dogs were evolved from wolves? Would you think you just and on the seventh day God rested and made dogs? Is that what you were thinking?
No, I mean, that one makes a little more sense. The cats too, when I put some thought into it. But no, I guess I didn't sit on the couch and think, I wonder how old Biscuit here, what would he look like 10,000 years ago?
Yeah, and the dogs that we have today very do not resemble wolves in sort of any capacity whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, thousands of years ago they were wolves, and I mean, you could argue that it's inhumane how we forced dogs to evolve over time. I'm not arguing that. I'm just simply saying dogs exist, and the only reason why they exist is for our existence and to satiate our existence.
Wait. How did we force dogs to evolve over time? Did we force them to eat our food? They were digging through our
Have you ever
trash.
seen a poodle, James? That was once a wolf. That's how we forced evolution of dogs, certain subspecies of dogs. Yeah, I mean, think about, have you seen a Pomeranian? That was a wolf at one point.
They have wolf-like personality traits, I will say.
But I think it's deeper than just the food. That I mean, there's probably, in living within close proximity to humans, I'm sure that there are like social cues they're picking up on. Like there's probably a ton of factors beyond just the food itself that they're observing that are eliciting these specific behaviors. Because it much of the food we eat is actually horrible for us and really killing us over time based on, whatever things that, I mean, ultimately there's lots of things that are good that are in food that keep, that we wouldn't be able to produce certain foods at the mass level that we're producing them at without some of the things, the additives that are in there that keep it fresh over time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably behavior. I remember I used to watch the show Planet Earth. It was a really good show. I mean, and it's on now in a bunch of different iterations. And one of the things that they sort of observed was the way so part of human behavior has had a negative impact on the ecosystem at large, which we know. But then there's also sort of a I don't know if it's positive or it's a net positive benefit, but like there are lots of animals whose behaviors have changed because of the existence of human beings. And like, whether it be eating our trash, whether, whatever it is, like clearly the existence of humans has completely changed lots of species in a way that, I don't know that it's like they're ready for domestication, but like that's clear that like lights within cities that have humans, the food we eat, restaurants, like all those things have had dramatic impacts on the ecosystem at large that are not necessarily negative. Maybe they are positive or not positive as much as they are just difference makers, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And Planet Earth is like the #1 rated show still today on IMDb. It's like a 9.7 out of 10. People love it.
Well, I just remember like in college after college when HDTVs became like a huge thing, and you like just watching those types of shows like Planet Earth in particular on like those new TVs that were like, showed just an insane clear, like they were just so clear and incredible. The picture quality was so insane that like it made it like watch those shows was fun just because the graphics were insane with them. And I mean, I think that remains true to this day. Like some of the shots they get are incredible.
Oh yeah, man, these raccoons though, they're scary smart. They you brought up their hands, like they're very dexterous. They work almost like human hands. They can unlatch gates, they can open jars, break into coolers, like you name it. They also have a ridiculous memory. A study showed that raccoons remember complex tasks after 3 years, which is just nuts for a small mammal. Then they have really good spatial awareness, like they can map neighborhoods and trash routes like they're running heists. These guys are insane.
Yeah, but they're not smarter than us, so whatever.
They're not.
You say they're insanely smart. It's like, well, how smart are they? Are they programming computers and stuff? Like my first thought here was, at what point does AI try to change our habits by being like AI at some point will be like, yeah, you should domesticate raccoons, but it's really like it's like a Trojan horse kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you get those raccoons in your house, nothing could go wrong, and then the AI starts talking to the raccoons, and suddenly the raccoons take over, and they're like, AI's like, you're going to be in power now. I think we just wrote an incredible futuristic movie right there.
I'd watch
Raccoons take over.
I'd watch it. Yeah, these raccoons, 3.5% smaller faces, the ones that have been around humans. Domestication is on the rise with these raccoons. All right, good show today. It's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. Taman Turner on the controls. We've been powered by Modelo. Big 12 Studios. You're watching us there, big12studios.com. If you missed any of our interviews with Brian Thornton, the VP of men's basketball for the Big 12, or Pete Sousa or Matt Fortuna, you can go back and find those wherever you get your podcasts. Big 12 Radio podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, right here. Tune in on demand. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Talk to you mañana.